Good evening and welcome to the Jinn&Tonic show on Friday, the 12th of January, 2018. Wishing you all a happy new year again. And I want to welcome my co-panelists, as always. Stop spamming.
Hi,
and
guys.
We have a surprise guest here by the name of Hassan. I don't want to say your last name unless you want that to be said.
Hassan Radwan. That's fine. Everyone knows me, I think.
Brilliant. So just to put it in context here, I have seen, and we'll be talking a little bit later about some censorship and hate, which is obviously the sort of main topic, even though we may talk about other things tonight. And I noticed Hassan talking in some of these Facebook groups, asking very relevant, very cogent questions and getting all kinds of responses and a little bit of emotion and so forth, as one sometimes does from Muslims. And he just kept asking these really good questions. I thought, wow, who's this gentleman? And I reached out on Facebook, and he had a few moments. So he's going to be with us for a very short time this evening. So Hassan, maybe you could just share a little bit of who you are, where you came from.
Yeah, sure.
You have an interest in this.
I'll introduce myself. My name is Hassan Radwan. I was born Muslim. I've been a Muslim all my life. I started having doubts. I was a teacher in Islamic school as well. And I've written books for Muslim children. So I was very into the deen, and I was very religious. I started having doubts towards, I was nearly 40, I was around 48, 49. And I started questioning things. And the doubts just grew and grew. I started questioning things in the Qur'an. And I eventually decided that, I didn't believe in it anymore. I didn't believe that the Qur'an was the word of God. I want to clear up one thing, because Stop Spamming, my old friend from the Jinn&Tonic show, mentioned that he heard that I'd gone back to Islam. For a while, I toyed with the label agnostic Muslim, really because I wanted to help. I felt that I had a duty to kind of help positive change and reform. But eventually that felt disingenuous, so I gave that up, and I just labeled myself agnostic now. I'm just me, Hassan. But the thing about Islam, I was talking to a friend of mine who's also an ex-Muslim, and he said to me, do you have anything to do with Islam anymore? And I said, well, the thing is that you may leave Islam, but Islam kind of never really leaves you. It's it's all around in my family and friends, and it's part of who I am. I grew up, with the Quran and the Hadiths and many of the cultural things around me. So it's very difficult to kind of leave that circle. But as far as belief goes, I don't believe the Quran is the word of God. I was just saying that I think there are some very good parts of the Quran. I think the Quran is an amazing book in many ways. But I think if we were to judge it as just purely a piece of human literature, I think we could judge it quite well as a book produced in the 7th century. But it's the problem that it's not being presented as a piece of human literature. It's being presented as the divine word of God, perfect linguistically and morally. And so then we have to judge it a little more harshly, I'm afraid. And it doesn't come off too well then.
So share with us, because we're always very critical of Islam on the show here. So if it were, a good human book, as you say, maybe highlight one or two things, because I know you mentioned it just before we went on air. One or two of the things that you feel are, in fact, pretty good in the Quran. Yeah,
I mean, I like the idea of personal responsibility. There's a verse in the Quran. Sorry, my memory is going a bit. لا تزر وازرة وزر أخرى, that no person shall carry the burden of another. So I always like this in contrast to Christianity, which always said that we had this idea of original sin hanging over our head. And I always felt that, that didn't seem to make sense to me, that we're responsible for Adam and Eve in paradise. I felt that, we should be responsible for ourselves. So I always liked that. Islam lays a lot of stress on charity, which I think is a wonderful thing. There's a lot of verses about charity, giving to orphans, giving to the poor. There's a lot of quite mystical, beautiful verses. There's the verse of the light and the verse of the chair, Ayatul Kursi, which are quite beautiful, mystical verses, that God is light upon light within a light and within a niche and so on. And of course, all the Gnostics and the Sufis love those sort of verses. And there's a lot of, sort of good injunctions, washing your hands and keeping yourself clean and doing all this. these sort of sensible things, which, I mean, one doesn't really need a God to tell them those things, but they're good things. Treatment. I think that the fact that the Quran came in an environment where there was slavery and misogyny, that in the 7th century context, it tried to deal with those things. And I think, as I say, looking at it purely as a piece of human literature, I think that's laudable. I think that it did make attempts. And I was saying that I did for a while. I used to give khutbas, Friday sermons, and I used to sort of pick out these lovely verses and hadith. There's some lovely hadith which, for example, that God doesn't look at your outwardness or your money or your wealth, but he looks at your heart and your actions, and that the best of you is the best in character, and the one who gives charity, and do not backbite, and all those other things which are in the Quran and hadith. And I used to give khutbas about all the nice things, highlighting the nice things. But I was saying that the material actually is quite sparse. I mean, you do run out of it after a while, and I ended up repeating myself quite a lot because there's all these other verses which I was avoiding about people burning in hell and having their skins roasted off and replaced, and hooked rods of iron dragging them through fetid water, and so much attack on kafirs, people who don't believe that they are the worst of creation, the worst of creatures. And there's, of course, the verses, like that a man is allowed to hit his wife under certain circumstances after 2 other steps. I think that was the one that actually kind of broke the camel's back, because I just couldn't believe that God would sanction a man hitting his wife under any circumstances. It just didn't seem right. And then the more the doubt started coming, the more I looked into it, the more it kind of just fell apart. And I think that, like most Muslims, I, grew up believing this was true. We didn't read the Quran with a critical eye. We read it with devotion. It was an act of worship to read the Quran. And so we never really sort of looked at it critically. It was always filtering out those nasty bits. It was always, oh, these horrible people are trying to twist the Quran and make it, and it's only when that sort of veil drops that you look at it critically and you realize, yeah, there's actually quite a lot of stuff in there which, how on earth did I not notice that before? It's like looking at one of those pictures by Escher. I don't know whether you ever looked at those pictures where they have the stairs going up and down and they don't make sense. The more you look at it, you think, oh gosh, I didn't notice that before. I suddenly started looking at the Quran in that way. It was like, oh my goodness, how did that pass me by? Ma malakat aymanukum, what your right hand possesses. Well, that's slavery, and it's sanctioning it. It's as I say, if you look at it as a piece of human literature, it's trying to set boundaries and good treatment for slaves. But as a book that is supposed to be the book for all times and all places, it's allowing it for all times and all places. And it's no surprise that you've got some Muslims. I mean, a majority of Muslims are impose their own humanity and look for the good. But there are some Muslims like, ISIS and Al-Qaeda and so on, all these groups who just want to take us back to the 7th century and live in a very sort of backward, barbaric way.
Yes. I mean, one of the things you brought up there, which was sort of one of the, you said the straw that broke the camel's back about the beating. And of course, no doubt you've probably heard every apologist a response to this. No, it's not really beating, as long as they don't hurt, these sort of things. And
I always find that such nonsense. I mean, even for argument's sake, let's say it's a symbolic light little tap. And the Quran doesn't say light at all. I mean, in a lot of translations, it says light. What that comes from is there's a hadith which says غير مبرح. So the hitting should be not harsh. So it shouldn't be a harsh hitting. And from that, many of the scholars say, oh, well, it should be just a symbolic light hitting. But try and just, I mean, I said this once before, just try and picture it. There are 3 steps. The first one is you talk to your wife. You explain to her, that she's been rebellious. And that's another thing we should, once you look, what does the rebellion mean? It often means not beautifying herself and making herself look pretty and so on. So you talk to her. And then the next step is separating in bed. Okay, so those 2 seem kind of reasonable, talking and separation. But if that doesn't work, وَضْرِبُوهُنَّ, hit them. So you say, okay, darling, I've talked to you and it didn't work. We've tried a separation and it didn't work. So now I want you just to stand still, my darling. I'm going to get my little miswak or my handkerchief or my little symbolic thing, and I'm going to tap you a few times on your shoulder, tap, tap, tap. Right. What's she supposed to do? She's supposed to say, yeah, when you talked to me, it didn't make any sense. When we separated, it didn't make any sense. But now that you've tapped me symbolically on my shoulder, it all makes sense, and I'm going to stop my bad ways. It's ridiculous. It's an insult to intelligence, to be honest with you.
Yeah, but there's an updated version now, because now it's no longer the miswak and no longer the tapping, but now it's leaving.
Now it's
leaving.
Leaving. No, I've heard that as well. But that linguistically is wrong as well.
Of course it is, but this is the latest attempt.
That's just embarrassing, to be honest with you. It's embarrassing. I can tell you it's وَضْرِبُوهُنَّ, which means to hit them, and it takes the verb directly. If it was to leave, it'd have to be وَضْرِبُوا عَنْهُنَّ, and there's no way that you can say وَضْرِبُوهُنَّ means leave them. It's absurd. It makes no sense.
Sorry, I was just doing that. So what's your views now? Obviously you're a non-believer, and obviously I picked you up on a Facebook chat, and even here you're very articulate. You're just sharing your views, and of course this seems to get we've had a few in the chat here, etc. And again, they're not representative. I'm very clear that one or a few Muslims don't represent them all, but there definitely seems to be a lot of emotional responses, particularly to ex-Muslims. Why do you think that is?
Well, I think the Hyde Park Corner group, which you've got there, seems to be these dower merchant type groups that head off down to Hyde Park, and they are quite traditional and orthodox in their views. There are different types of Muslims, of course, but these dower merchants are really very kind of, I would say, strict Salafi types, really, most of them. They're very orthodox, and they believe that. I think I raised the point about apostasy, and they were quite okay with saying that in an Islamic state, an apostate should be killed for his disbelief. And so I think you'll find a lot of Muslims they will not say that. So they will not say that. They will try and sort of make up apologetics for it, that it's not in this day and age, or it's it's a type of treason, or something like that. But I think that particular group, the Hyde Park group, seems to be quite an orthodox fundamentalist group.
Yeah, I think a couple of them sort of respond with apostasy is okay if you keep it to yourself. The moment you go out into the street, and they equate it with treason. How they get to treason is just beyond me, but this is how some people think or attempt to think. And so that's when it's really, now if you're in a Sharia state, now you can be put to death.
I'm going to have to go off for a minute. Can I go and come back?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. No problem at all. You've got the link, so join us again when you're ready. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks.
Cheerio.
Thank you. Cheerio now.
Good evening, Abu. My good sir, how are you?
I'm fine.
Brilliant. I'll just mute Hassan. He's going to stay connected by the look of it, and then pop back again later, hopefully. So that's great. We were chatting about it, and as I say, I saw him in the Facebook. How are you, Abu? You've been very quiet there.
Me, yeah, I'm fine. I was listening to what was his name?
Hassan. Yes.
Yeah.
I'm always fascinated with ex-Muslims, and Hassan says it in different wording, but the words all kind of sound the same. Hey, when I started to look at this, it was very different. When it's almost like when the veil, somebody said the Matrix, they switched on their critical thinking, whatever term, it all, they use slightly different words, but the general gist is the same, which is once I looked at it with different eyes, I stepped back, or whatever, however you want to think about it. Now I started to notice things which I'd never done before. I just read these and accept it, and suddenly it all changed. And Hassan kind of alluded to that in his way as well, which I always find.
My experience is that it was kind of a build-up. There is this kind of a theory in neuroscience that when you get a new idea, or when you have like a paradigm shift in your own belief system, it's like the right side of the brain that wants to see things more as they are. So the right side of the brain kind of, while the left side want to like be on the track that you're already on. So you pick up this shubuhat until and kind of charge the right brain until it reaches a critical point when it flips over and it changes the left side, and that's when
So it's almost like it's a cognitive battle by the sounds of it.
Yeah, but it is almost like the charge is building up until it like.
Did you hear this thing, which I think is the quote of 2018 so far? When we read the Quran, we did not read it with a critical eye, but with conviction. That is the whole thing.
Yes.
Yeah. So you're doing. I was never like that. I'm gonna go out and look at this critically. I was like I was doing my best to defend it, but then small things like sneaked in, and then this charge of the right brain or whatever it was built up slowly.
The typical reaction: you never read the Quran or understood it. This is how you always get this. If a God is too stupid to bring out a book that everybody can understand, why should I follow this God? Is that God worth following?
Yes, I mean, this is so it's like it's unfalsifiable, so a couple of things I noticed based on that, which is obviously something that you may have had, Abu, in some interactions or not, I'm not sure. But either you haven't read the Quran or they try and test you to see how much you quote know. I think if you reversed it, and we had someone like Hassan who'd been doing this for however long, his entire life pretty much, we could quite quickly see who knew what. So it's either you don't understand it, you haven't read it fully, or some version of that sort of thing, because it's just not possible that you could have actually come to this by critical thinking and intellectual evaluation. That only works one way. It doesn't work the other way, clearly, which in fact I think is exactly the opposite way. So it only works one way, but it's not the Muslim way, because every time I hear them, and that's still my claim, that the critical thinking just evaporates when they look at their own thing, which kind of is something that Hassan alluded to as well. So let's get started with our crazy comments. We didn't have many, but it's amazing how quickly they add up. And then we'll get on to sort of more of the main topic for however long that is. I have got somebody else that's in the chat that wants to join us. So once we get through this little bit, I'll be looking at that when we carry on discussing. But here's our first one of the evening. As you can see there, a very peaceful person that, and this one was, it will be an honor to rip Sarah's head off. So this was in relation to that altercation video. Somebody quite rightly put down them ISIS member here. So it's just amazing how, yes, they're still in the minority, but there's still these Muslims that want to go towards violence. This one was actually going to be the first one, and even Dave commented on this. So try and make sense of this. Atheists do egghead, word jabber, explain nothing like their God, Lucian Krauss.
Lawrence.
Yes, I was going to say, let's see if we can actually. Atheists do egghead, word jabber, explain nothing like their God, Lawrence Krauss. Okay, so if we try to reword that, atheists don't explain anything. And we supposedly have Lawrence Krauss as our God nothing. We've been critical of Krauss on here. Obviously,
no, this is the nothing, because he talks about nothing.
Yes, but he's also, again, it would be useful if this person actually understood what Krauss said. He talks about a scientific version of it.
Too much.
No, of course not. No. And there were some wonderful replies there. TDS Dave, hey, Speaker's Corner, this must be the silliest comment of the week. And then another one of our longtime viewers, Kane, does anyone have a translation of what this guy just said? And then I said, this is because I only read it once. I don't go and sort of try and make sense of it. If it doesn't make sense immediately, I'm not going to go and try and work it out. It's incoherent to me, TDS Dave. I'll add it to the crazy comment section. And somebody else said, oh, I think I've got this riddle. Atheists do some egghead-like word jabbering, but They explain nothing, just like their own God, Lawrence Krauss. There we go. So he disentangled us. Could this be the surah like it that we've all been searching for?
I mean,
Okay, that is good.
to be
I
fair,
thought that was pretty.
I think his argument in his book A Universe from Nothing is not a worthless read, but I think his argument about nothingness is kind of weak, I would say.
Oh, okay. I think it's a good one. So maybe we can chat about that at some point
Yeah.
later on. Let's get through all of this, because I've read that book 2 or 3 times, and I've listened to it a couple of times as well. So I'm reasonably familiar. I don't remember every page. I'm not going to quote it to you on a page, but I've read it more than once. So yes, and I responded to this fellow there. Very nice. That was genuinely amusing. So the surah like it. I thought that was quite a good comment. So Bilge Khan, I thought that was pretty good. And this, I think you sent me, Abu, so you might have some context on this. Beautiful. This must be a Muslim. Beautiful liar. You can't help yourself not testifying against your lies. Names of mountains in old text, hadiths, also Bible, Quran talking about Valley of Bakkah, and the same names, mountains of Mecca, old Saudi Arabia, have Zotis moment. Can you make sense of that one? What was this in relation to?
I think he's saying the point he's trying to make is that the Quran, the Hadiths, and the Bible are talking about place names in and near Mecca in Saudi Arabia, even the
Right,
Bible.
yeah. Mm-hmm.
So I reply,
okay.
yes, but those names has been linked to these places in Hijaz. Hijaz is the area of Mecca, Medina, retroactively.
And then he responds.
What is your opinion on Bakkah? What is Bakkah?
Yes, Becca is the time when it is mentioned.
No, because there's different opinions on what Bakkah means. Whether this is Mecca, Becca, if this is Bakkah in Iraq, or if this is just an area, this is region. Different interpretations.
Linguistically, if I would make my best guess, Becca is very close to the word Baka, or the verb Baka, meaning crying. So I would say that it's probably the
Valley of the Tears.
The Valley of Crying. And the Valley of Becca is also in the Bible, or in a psalm. And that's from Hebrew, and Hebrew and Arabic is closely related. So I think the verb root is the same in Hebrew. So my best guess that it means the Valley of crying.
Okay. So then your interlocutor responded, Abu Malad, hills, rocks of Safia and Mawara. Okay, there we go. Both in today's Mecca are mentioned in the Old Testament. I advise you out of decent dig out a proof in Petra that says Petra was Mecca. And you said, can you point to where the Old Testament, Salfa and Mawa are mentioned? And I'm guessing you didn't have a response to that.
No, that's the next image.
Ah, that's the next one.
Oh, he will say that lastly. It is a little bit...
Okay, you read this because can you see it there clearly enough? Should I make it a bit bigger? Let's make it a bit bigger, and then you can... There you go.
Okay. Beautiful liar. When God, Nort Muhammad, speaks of wine... Now he's talking about... He's making 2 comments. So that was like the first comment he made on this series we made on the Jinn&Tonic show. Like the mystery of Vadi Becca, or whatever it was.
Yes, I remember.
So now he's commenting on another thing in that series. When God, Nort Muhammad, speaks of wine grapes and all other plants, it could have been addressed to all people.
No, read it correctly. It cold have been.
It cold. Yeah. I think you mean could. Yeah. Have been addressed to all people on earth, talking about God providing the fruits for them where it can grow. Now even if the Meccans were addressed, it is still not a proof, I think you mean. It's still not a proof Mecca must have been found in an area rich in plants. So my reply was, if that is the case, why didn't the Quran mention potatoes, kiwi fruits, avocado, etc.? If Muhammad is talking to the whole world and not his own people, he could have mentioned any fruits.
So also they are explicitly talking about trading grapes and olives, which is impossible.
Yeah, but he will talk more about that. But his reply was, Abu Mulhid, sheep Zionist, I would have left your nonsense about fruits of the world unanswered were it not for your ignorance. A human being could not have written the Quran.
What a wonderful response. I won't answer your questions, and I'll just say some gobbledygook there. Not gobbledygook, but nothing related to what you asked.
So if you scroll down a little bit, I can see.
Yeah, sorry. Let me go a bit further down there. There we go.
And submarines go underwater.
I didn't know that I am a Zionist. I suppose that sheep Zionists are not always aware of their Zionism. Can you please inform an ignorant Zionist like me why Allah, when through Muhammad spoke to the Meccan pagans, only mentioned crops that grew in northwestern Arabia at the time and did not mention crops like potatoes, kiwi fruits, and avocado? Surely Allah must have been aware of them, and surely it would have been relevant to mention them if He, meaning Allah, is speaking to the whole world.
Yes, I mean, you're just addressing the claim that he made that it could have been God providing the fruits of them, blah, 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 all the world. I mean, I think he's just pulling something out of his pants there, isn't he? Any sort of response, isn't it? And you just asked a relevant question there. Does it continue? I'm not sure on the next one.
Yeah. One last.
Okay. One more. Let's just make that a bit
this
bigger
is
so you can read it.
There we go. Both the previous topics. Abu Mulhid, infantile Zionist.
It's changing a little bit. You were cheap, now you're infantile.
Yeah. Certainly not because God meant to list all fruits of Syria, since the fruits God mentioned in the Quran are all most essential to the body. Pomegranates kill cancer. One can live only on dates and water. Perhaps this is why just these fruits are mentioned. Anyway, it is telling if you can't find anything serious to attack Islam with. Grow up and find something else. As I told you, find a lie to support Mr. Liar Gibson.
Oh, they don't like him, do they? What's his first name again?
Dan Gibson.
Dan Gibson, that's right. Yeah.
Or is it Daniel? Maybe, I don't know.
But it's telling though, isn't it? Because isn't it coincidental that it's only the fruits of Mecca that was mentioned? That would almost sound like it was somebody that only lived in Mecca and only knew about the fruits of Mecca.
No,
I mean,
it's the opposite. Fruits that you do not find in Mecca, but only in northwestern Arabia.
Yeah, that's the point.
Sorry, that's what I mean. Sorry, yeah.
He's talking to the pagans in Mecca, and he talks about like as if it is like everyday things, and then he talks about crops that couldn't grow in Mecca. So they could only grow, or the nearest place would be northwestern Arabia.
Right.
Okay, he continues. Abu Mulhid, you are no different from any other liar. You ask for something, and when I send what you asked, you turn to another thing. Read Genesis, where Abraham goes to the south of Egypt with Ishmael in order to sacrifice, and you will read everything about a place that cannot be anything but Mecca. At least read your Bible before lying about Islam. The same applies to Mr. Liar Gibson. So this is very funny because he's very angry that I didn't just out of hand accept his claim that the Bible talks about Mecca. But then he says, read Genesis where Abraham goes to south of Egypt. wait a minute.
He doesn't.
Is today's Mecca located in the south of Egypt? How is this an argument? Like, Mecca is in Hijaz, not in south of Egypt. There's the Red Sea between them, you know. So
I mean, Abraham never traveled 1,000 kilometers in his lifetime.
I don't know, but like if you read Genesis, and he says that you go to south of Egypt, south of Egypt is not Mecca. It's not the same place. So how is this? No. And then he says, okay,
sorry,
the last thing, if you are Muslim, at least read the Bible too. Okay, that's not so important.
Yeah. Good. Thank you for that, Abu.
I just thought that he was kind of funny.
Not often that you send us over one, and you don't get as much sort of hate comments. I think Stop Spamming is the clear leader. I'm somewhere in the middle, and then you're sort of bringing up the rear there. So between the three of us, that is. So let's move on. Brother Hamza is a legend, so knowledgeable. I think this was Redbeard Hamza talking to somebody or other. And I just thought the irony of that comment was definitely worth adding in as one here. And it's not done yet. Hamza, as usual, batting these guys out of the park. Oh, this was objective morality, the old canard that the Muslims have got objective morality. So those two Hamza worshippers there. So this guy, I think, seems to know something. He's often talking. He's doing some videos, etc. I've asked him onto the show. He hasn't yet. Maybe he'll come on at some point. Anyway, here's his response to Hassan, whom we've just had on the show. Hassan Radwan, don't indulge in low-level polemics. There is a hadith narrated by Aisha saying the Prophet never hit a woman. Clearly, she did not view that as hitting. It was something which was done to ward off doubts and evil thoughts, etc. The intention is not to hurt or to cause the person pain. Let's be fair. And to be honest, if that is why you left Islam, you should at least reconsider. And I think, good evening, TJ. How are you?
Doing good. How about yourself?
I'm good, thank you. So, and this was something that Hassan just mentioned when he was on the show as well. So this is the new sort of thing. It was done to ward off doubts. So what was done? Was it touching? Was it beating? What was it that was done to ward off doubts and evil thoughts? And if, we just have to go to a dictionary and know what the word beating is. The dictionary overrides everything else. You can bring me 50 million prophets. All I have to bring you is a dictionary, and that's the end of the story. So maybe this first.
She says he pushed me hard in the chest, which caused me pain. End of story. What more do you want?
Yeah, well, this is the sort of apologetic we get here. This was done to ward off doubts and evil thoughts. Well, where's your evidence for that?
And is it correct to ward off? Well, ward off doubts. If to ward off doubt, you can hit a person or you can shove them hard to cause the pain. Is that really realistic? And is that the way that you should handle this? Don't you have arguments? Doesn't this God know how to handle people and give them convincing, messages instead of allowing for violence?
Yes, well, and for Muslims, this is even worse because it wasn't God necessarily. This was obviously Muhammad. So,
Muhammad was God guided.
Yes, correct. But as we know, he made mistakes, so he wasn't perfect. So they could always argue this wasn't the message of God. This was just Muhammad going astray, which I've heard Muslims, accept, that he was tricked by Satan, etc. So they don't claim, those that claim to know a little bit don't claim that he's a perfect. He made mistakes, but he didn't make a mistake in his understanding and his remembering, of course, of everything that Allah said to him. He just made a few other mistakes. I mean, he was human after all. But that's only when you push hard enough. Moving on. This was part of it. I don't know who. This was in the video, actually. The hand in position, referring to this pushing of Aisha, of the Prophet Muhammad, was to drive away evil influence. Was. That's obviously some word about that.
This is the whispering of the devil.
All right. And for conferring blessings. It's nothing bad at all. The intent of the Prophet was to drive away evil influence from Aisha. And his reference, Discover the Truth, website link below.
We'll just read
So
what
there we go.
TJ just put there.
So TJ's written into the private chat here for us. Let me read that there. TJ, maybe in a moment you can just tell us where you got this from. There you got it at the bottom of the tafsir. As to a beating, the Holy Prophet allowed it very reluctantly, and even then did not like it. But the fact is that there are certain women who do not mend their ways without a beating. In such a case, the Holy Prophet has instructed that she would not be beaten on the face or cruelly or with anything which might leave a mark on the body. Tafsir, I'm very bad with the pronunciation. Maududi. Thank you. Makes perfect sense, as you said there. So that obviously comes from that tafsir. So there are a few women that just will not mend their ways. I wonder if there's a few men and what happens to them. Clearly, it only works in one direction, this. So and this is the thing that obviously some people keep reminding us of, but Muslims are quick to forget. This is a rather small one, so I'll have to make it big. So this person comes on here every so often, and I think this was towards you, Stop, so I won't use all the expletives. Stupid effing sexist piece of dog S. Useless opinions and inconsistent views is all he's capable of. And this was obviously towards you, Stops, because here's another version of it. I probably won't read the whole thing unless you really want me to. Knowing what happens to people like Stop Spamming when they're dead is honestly very comforting. That loser would be better off criticizing the degenerate kind, like the type of filthy oogles at nudist beaches, whose indecency actually poses more of a public issue. I know, what sort of public issue? Hey, that people can walk around naked. I know, men might just get excited and can't help themselves. Hence, public nudity fines, instead of women, Muslim or not, that actually value modesty. Let me just make this a bit bigger so I don't have to keep doing that. There we go. And who want to observe it by wearing burqas. What kind of a degenerate must he be to be so critical of women that wear what they want to wear? Also, why is it so hard for the loser to
or not want to wear?
Yes, exactly. And why is it so hard for the loser to accept that donning the burqa might be a personal decision for many, including several educated Western converts who may wear it in public for their own reasons? Him being the blatant sexist dog he obviously is the only explanation. Well, of course it is. Something he would probably know is that, 1, no one's forcing him to interact with them, and just in case he was ignorant of this, yes, the burqa is in fact meant to create a barrier between them and sad Fs like himself that seek to chat up and harass every female. Harassing women in burqas in Doha, of all places, is really telling on how low life's decency, especially when there are plenty of open whores desperate for attention from trash like himself in other parts of the world. And number 2, I mean, obviously this person wasn't listening. Well, they're not thinking either, but they certainly weren't listening. At no point did you talking up. You chatted to people in an office that you had to interact with people, is the way I remember it.
Correct.
So obviously, somebody can make up or hear what they want to hear and then, summarize it, misrepresent it. One of the key tactics of people who don't listen or comprehend. Sometimes else, that old bag of bones should know is that he essentially has zero say in what they decide to wear, neither here nor in their countries. And 3, the protests in Iran don't and shouldn't suggest to any reasonable, perhaps, person maybe, that's supposed to be, that all burqa wearers are under the same circumstances. Let's hope they've learned something today. Stop deleting my comments. Well, I don't know who's deleting your comments. It certainly isn't me. Maybe they were spam, or you put links in which case they'll go to the spam folder. One more just for luck, Stabs, because hey, this person does really love you deep down. This is probably, what do they call it, like this tough love stuff. Is this the same one? I thought it was a different one. No, it's the same one. My apologies. It's the same one. And this was one that Essence of Thought got, again, one of the lovely ones there. Can't wait till you die, my friend. You will find out the real meanings then. Because this was Essence of Thought's critique of one of the Muslim things. And he responded, well, aren't you a lovely human being? Yes, the typical responses that one gets there. So I think that's all of them. I just want to make sure. Oh, no, we've got a few more stops. My apologies. You gave me a few here that I've missed out. I didn't want to go on to the next section before I've done that. So let's just bring that back up again. There we go. Right. Yes, Hassan. Still, your video didn't prove non-existence of God. You fool. How can something come from nothing? Show me a thing on this earth which came from nothing. Hamza was right. You fat F. Rather than sitting there on your ass like a lazy C, judging and analyzing people, go and find something more useful to do. Leave brother Hamza alone. Don't cherry pick and choose where you see a mistake. Well, of course, how else are you going to do it? Hamza got plenty of banging videos and he always makes sense. Oh dear. I think that's the like a prime example of somebody that is completely hallucinated and hypnotized. And this is the thing that I see a lot, of course, and I'm sure you guys see it both at the park and in the comments. There's some Muslims, not all, I will continue to stress until my last day, that are just hypnotized. The moment somebody talks loudly, talks confidently, sounds like they know what they're talking about, they just go, my word, this guy's brilliant. It's like Darren Brown just hypnotizing them for a moment, and they just believe whatever comes out of the person's mouth. There's no, hang on a moment, let me think about this. It's just, nope, this guy's great because he can talk, he can butt people up, he can shut people up or butt in or whatever the case is. So there you go. That's just telling you stops. Oh, no, that's something else. This was a clear Quran. I'll leave that for now. Let's not worry about that. We shall leave that for now. Cool. So let me just bring this up here. So let's get on to the topic of the evening and we'll see how far this goes. And then obviously we can bring up other things. And TJ, if you've got any thoughts as well, feel free to share them. Oh, I did want to share this. So let me just share this. And I want to get somebody else's opinion. Sometimes I have to read things more than once and I'm not sure whether it's a crazy comment or it's meant in another way. So sometimes it's a bit ambiguous. So I'm asking for your feedback here, gentlemen. I'll read this off and then tell me whether this is a crazy comment or not. So this was on Phil's debate with Matt, our discussion. Science falsifies atheism by proving with extraordinary peer-reviewed evidence that beyond a reasonable doubt, the creator, evolver, sustainer, and ruler of the universe, that 100% all-natural God equals the law of nature and forces of physics. Atheism, rest in peace. What would you guys say? When I read that, I was like, I'm not sure whether that's a crazy comment, whether this person is actually agreeing with Phil.
Can I comment? Like,
yeah.
No, it doesn't falsify atheism. The only thing that he is doing is that he is taking a kind of Spinoza position and saying that like nature equals God. And if you want to take that position, sure, but it doesn't falsify atheism. Just that you view like the cosmos as God.
Yeah, but Abu, you cannot falsify atheism. You can't. It's impossible to falsify it. You can only you can only provide a God, and then atheism will fall away. But that's the only thing that you can do. There's no way that you can falsify it.
I think it's technically, pragmatically possible. Say that atheism. You make an experiment where, like, okay, if God shows himself in all his glory and like do extraordinarily convincing miracles, like he shows himself, he creates things right out in space without any, like, then atheism would be falsified.
No, it would fall away. You can't falsify. It's just a belief. It's just the absence of a belief, and you cannot falsify the absence of a belief. That's impossible. You can only change the absence of a belief into knowledge.
It's
not falsification.
Right. But the atheistic claim that there is no God, that you could be
and that's why exactly I say this claim does not exist. Exactly.
So the more I read it now, the more I think this person is actually quoting something that Matt may have said in the discussion, and then sort of ridiculing it in a sense. So I think probably this is not a crazy comment. This is somebody who actually just quoted something that Matt would have said and then put these words in.
How can you have an all-natural God? It doesn't make sense. This is exactly what Abu was saying, and I agree.
Yes, yeah. So I think that's the sort of.
That's not a crazy. That's not as crazy as you like. Albert Einstein kind of had this position.
Yeah, this is this pantheism. Yeah.
Pantheism is there's a little bit different flavor. That this is more like Spinoza's version of God.
Yeah.
And
God is just the totality of all nature or something like that.
That is nothing wrong with it. It's just a matter you place the name God of something else. I mean, I could say that I don't use the word God, but I would say that I have a lot of common with Spinoza. I think he has. I kind of view the universe or in an almost deified way.
Yeah. Okay, so cool. I just wanted to check on that. So even for me, I think this person is just sort of parodying part of a quote. Cool. Okay, so I wanted to obviously, one of the main topics, and it came up, and that's what there's a few screenshots. I did invite Saeed to come on the show, and he didn't respond. He may have been busy, so I'm not going to, say anything other than I did say to him, hey, we're going to talk about.
You know why he didn't reply? Because he is Shaheed.
Which means what? Translated.
He's martyred.
Right, okay. Well, he certainly seems alive and well in the interaction and so on. So all I can say is I said to him, come on the show. We're going to be talking about Muslim censorship and the word hate. And so here we are talking about it. If he's in the chat, I'm not watching the chat at the moment. So if you guys...
Maybe they have internet connection in Jannah.
He's in okay there because sorry, I get your point there. He's obviously in the UK and he's the owner of one of the YouTube channels. He's also the admin of this group. So these are the admins. So you can obviously clearly see who's an admin there. And I know these four. I'm not aware of the other two guys. I mean, I know them as in I've seen them comment once or twice, but I know the four guys down the bottom there. They're all people that have been to Speaker's Corner. So this is the channel. It's Speaker's Corner Hyde Park. They've got 2,100 odd members. Most of them are Muslim. And so basically here's what happened. So there's been in this particular group, which I encourage you all to join. You have to get admin approval. I'm not an admin of this group. As you see, it's all Muslims that are admins. And basically the tone of this group is heading into a place where I wanted to avoid. Unfortunately, updates will be available soon. And so basically the reason that this post came about is because there were a few ex-Muslims like Abdullah Samir and Abdullah Gondal and a few others. I don't remember all of their names. And they were all posting in there. I didn't see anything of hate myself, but I wasn't, again, the hate we'll come on to. But I didn't see anything there, quote, offensive. So, but these guys, because when somebody gets removed, their name, for those people who don't know, their name goes gray. And if you touch on the name, it says no longer in the group. And so you can see that somebody's, been removed out of the group. And so these ex-Muslims were getting banned out of the group. And I saw this, and so did other people. And so, we flagged this up. And so this is kind of, and then there were people going, I removed him. So this guy's obviously a troll, but he's going, I removed him. He's not one of the admins or even the mods or whatever, because he's a fake Zionist, blah, blah, blah. Win hearts and minds. He's trying to say, yeah, it's a waste of time. And then, of course, this fellow here is I'm guessing a non-believer or certainly critical of Islam anyway. And so basically, I put in the bottom there, I think in my opinion, you need to be the only admin. Then if critics of Islam or anyone else is removed or banned from the group, at least we know who is responsible, and then you're free to explain or not. But at least you can then let everyone know if this is a restricted speech group or a free speech group, because it came to light in some of the other comments somewhere, which I don't necessarily have here, that Hassim actually apparently banned them. And this was from Muslims saying Hassim had banned them. So I'm not saying that. That's what the other Muslims were saying. And so there was that response on this particular group, because there's 2,000 Muslims on there. So if you're going to go and post a video, and of course you're going to get responses on there, so that if you're a critic of Islam, then I suggest join this group. You may well get banned, but he's done another group which I will show you shortly, So here's Abdullah Samir basically saying, so himself and Abdullah Gondal were kicked out of the Speaker's Corner group. So was this other gentleman and this other fellow here. His post was deleted. I mean, you can read through this or pause this at some point if you want to read through it later on. But basically, there were a lot of claims being made, and these guys were obviously just putting the challenges that they had as ex-Muslims onto the group there. That's what I saw anyway. And so they were all kicked out of the group, and then there was a long sort of discussion that emanated from Abdullah on his own Facebook page, because obviously he's not in the Facebook group anymore, so he can't post it there. And so he felt that the tides were turning, and I think we've said the same thing here. So there you can see there at the top there, his name is grayed out, so he's no longer on there. And this was one of his claims, just to see what, if we can find some hate here. So this is one of the ex-Muslims that got banned. Religion makes bold claims. To establish the truth of any claim, we need verification. Can we verify the existence of jinns? No. Can we verify the existence of Satan? No. Can we verify the existence of heaven and hell? No. Can we verify Adam and Eve? No. Can we verify the existence of angels? No. Can we verify the two angels are seated on our shoulders, recording our deeds? No. Can we verify that humans can live inside the belly of whales? No. And so on. And so obviously they felt that this was one of the comments probably that was in some way offensive or insulting. And here again, they were deleting comments. So I'm just bringing up a few examples so that people don't think I'm just making stuff up here. So again, Abdullah Samir, this was originally when he was in the group, and you can see there, possibly it might be a bit small, but it's grayed out now, so he's not part of the group. So he was kicked out. So he obviously made this comment, and here was a Muslim who responded to him. I love how you, Abdullah Samir, ignored your marker highlighted in your screenshot. The part where it says swear, lie, and spread hate wasn't highlighted. Let's be honest. You was okay, but the young boy Gondal and co need help with manners and approach. So essentially, here's a Muslim acknowledging that, if you don't have manners or the approach that's suitable to them, then you're going to get kicked out. So even acknowledging that Samir wasn't one of those people, obviously he's not an admin, but he was responding obviously to these claims.
Yeah, but then why was he kicked?
Right, exactly. So somebody else obviously found something he said offensive, or they just went, we don't want to have these ex-Muslims posting every day in here, and so we're just going to kick them out. And so who knows? That's still a mystery. As I said, had Saeed come on here, he could have explained it, but we're left to wonder why then he was kicked out. But I suspect it's because they were posting regularly. Every time I went in there, I mean, I'd perhaps go in there every day, every second day, just to have a look, and there was a post from one or more of the guys there, making these responses. And of course, with a group of 2,000, you're going to get some responses back, which is obviously what you want to hear. What are these people going to say? How are they going to respond? And so that was obviously part of it. But just going on more broadly, this is something that Stops brought to my attention. Again, I'll make it a bit bigger. And so this is the owner.
Okay, this is the same guy. This is the Syed guy. He is the owner of this Official Speakers Corners, whatever, Dawa channel. Official Speakers Corner channel at Dawa, #Dawa.
Yes. How long ago was the Stops? Let me read it and then you can talk about it. None of your comments are being published on all of your channels, from all of your channels. Just thought I'd let you know. You are blocked on most of the channels. Have a nice day. And so this was obviously this fella, Saeed. And when did this come about, Stops? How long ago was this?
This was like 4 months ago. Yeah, this was...
Oh, there, it actually says the 4 months, doesn't it? Yeah. Yeah, it says it there. So obviously they seem to know which are your channels, or they found out because maybe they can hear your voice or whatever the case is. And so every time you respond or not, because I think you can even ban or block people even if they haven't commented on a video. As long as you know what their YouTube channel name is, you can probably do something like that. I don't know. I don't do that, so I'm not that familiar with it. So that's where we stand with a Facebook group, and there's a clear example of somebody banning Stops for responding. But it's okay. Let me rephrase that. Muslims that threaten violence don't get banned. I'm not saying that everybody claims that it's okay, but those people don't get banned. But Muslims can say whatever they like, and they don't get banned. It's when somebody like Stops, I don't know if I've been banned. I might have been on 1 or 2 channels. But whenever somebody is blunt and gets to the point and calls things out, they get banned. And this is part of the ongoing censorship that I see both in that group and here you see it for yourself. So those are the main ones that I wanted to bring in. So I want to bring you guys in now, and just obviously, Shops, you've had this. I don't know what other experiences you've had. I don't know if TJ, you or Abu have seen these experiences. I'm going to just, there's a couple of other things I want to just look for. So maybe you can share a few thoughts on what I've shared there and or whatever you might have observed yourself.
I just want to add one thing, and that is I've shown this now on several videos where you make a comment and it's visible to you, and then you come back a couple of days later and your comment is still there. But if you then change your login and you go to a different, or you log out, your comment is no longer visible. So that means Google has implemented a thing which is politically correct in their eyes, but it's hypocritical in mine, where you think your comment is still up and running, but others can't see it. So
yeah, but I think that
I've shown this in a couple of videos now, where I've shown side by side the two types, both comments with my comment and without, if I am logged on as a different user, so nobody else can see this comment, but I am led to believe that my comment is still up and running, which is not true.
But isn't that because it has been like removed to the spam key or something like that?
No. It's visible. If I log in as myself, it's visible.
Yeah. For you, it's visible. But I think it's like, I agree that it's weird that they fool you to believe that it's still there. But I think for the other users, or for the host, it ends up in the can, so to speak.
Okay, somebody challenged this. Somebody went to this Syed guy and said, listen, is it true that you are censoring comments, what this atheist is claiming and showing on the screen? And the guy says, well, we've had some problems with a lot of, inappropriate language, he said. And therefore, we deleted a whole lot, and we then mass deleted a whole lot of comments, and we did not approve them. So indirectly, he is saying, yes, we don't really care. And if anybody doesn't say something nice, we just go and delete it. Because then maybe it's in a holding phase. And this is why I always give it a couple of days so that people can go and look at the holding place before they can go and either tick OK, accept, or delete, so that they can do that. They have the time to do that. But then, even if I think, okay, yeah, maybe I am in the spam holding area and they haven't released me from this, then he acknowledged by sending me this, have a happy day, that I am actually blocked. So here there is there's no two ways in this case.
Yeah, it's weird that you're not like notified that your comment is not showing. But because I remember this, I remember this, like, not this Christmas, but the Christmas before that. I was using the Jinn&Tonic show channel. I wanted to invite this YouTuber that is now gone, Kraut and Tea. So I sent a comment, or I put in an invitation in the comment box, and I used a link. And then when I was logged in as Caliph Coin, I went there and looked, and then it wasn't there. So because it was a link, but I could still see it with the Jinn&Tonic show channel.
Yeah, but not all links automatically get put into spam.
Yeah, so when I'm looking at the channel, if you post a link, it almost always goes to spam straight away. So if you post a link to another video,
I have a lot of links which go straight through to the comments.
What channel is that? Oh, on your own channel?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. For me, almost every single time somebody posts it, and I've looked, I don't want anything to go into the spam. I want all the comments to appear. But there's no way that I've found in YouTube that allows all commenters to post whatever they want, whether they have links or not. And so I'm constantly having to go in and approve all the links.
Yeah, I've commented. I'm fighting two things at the moment, or three things now. One has gone away. The one was the language in the Hangouts. This has now been solved. What I'm battling is that the order is by default set to what is popular, the top comments, what somebody might have said 3 years ago. So you have to go into each video individually and say, no, 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 no. This video, I don't want top comments. I wanted the newest first. I want the chronology there. But you have to do it individually on each video. So I'm fighting that with them and telling them, no, you should be able to choose this by default, and that's it.
Yes, yeah. I mean,
and then the spam, I said, no, forget about the spam. I am able, I'm a big boy. I can decide what goes into spam. I don't need Google to decide for me what goes into spam and not.
Yeah, I agree with you. There should be a global button that you can say, allow all comments. That's all I want. I don't want anything to go into spam, because otherwise I don't always check spam every day, even maybe every second day. And so now comments are sitting there. So people copy and paste. And so you see 3 of the same because they can't see their comments appearing. Anyway, that's all YouTube sort of stuff. So yes, YouTube is trying to do whatever they're doing. And of course it hits people that like us that want free speech. Because again, I think it's pretty clear that YouTube does not want it. It would be great if YouTube said, hey, you know what? We are no longer a free speech platform. We are restricted speech. You can say whatever you like, but you are going to get punished if you say things that we don't like, or the companies that advertise with us claim that they don't like. And
that's fair. It's a private company, absolutely. But don't pretend on the one hand that you're all for free speech and you're for a lively debate, and then on the other hand say, no, 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 no.
Yes, yeah, correct, yeah. So, yeah, and so the other thing I want to share here then is the other. Let me bring this up. So here's the other group that again, I encourage people who are watching that are interested in having a debate to join. So this one here, I made it slightly bigger. So this is the main channel. I'll come back to that in a moment. So this is the main one. This is the potentially restricted free speech one, which is just called Speakers Corner Hyde Park. And then he made this backup channel here called Official Speakers Corner Prime Hyde Park London. So if you go and type that in, and I think he made me and a couple of other people moderators on that. We'd have to check. There's only 75 members. I said to him, hey, oh, there we go. Let's add these people in while I'm there. All these people should be in anyway. And it just sees you can keep adding, but there's no way to keep adding. There's no way to mass add people, which is unfortunate. It would be great if you could just add loads and loads of people in here, but you got to click on every single one of these separately. So if we go to members here, no, he hasn't. Has he made me a moderator? He said he did. No, I'm just a member there by the look of it. I thought he said he did. Admins and moderators. So no, by the look of it, he hasn't added me in there. He said he would, but he hasn't, so I can always chase up. But anyway, that would be the group that I would suggest when you want to, have a free and open conversation. And here I'd be interested in other people's thoughts. So let me make this a bit bigger so people can actually see it. So this is Saeed then asking on a poll, is it okay to insult one another and then say it's free speech? If so, then it is abuse of free speech. If so, then is it abuse of free speech, and should we respect free speech by not insulting a fellow human being? And there's various options there. Can we have free speech and respect and not insult each other? So not many people voted. Free speech is free speech, which I voted for, and a couple of others. You can read them all there, but essentially, I guess what he's trying to get at is what's the level here. And then there was many comments here, and I put one in. Feeling insulted in inverted commas is subjective and low-level psychological state. And moreover, when it is unpacked, i.e. explained in detail, it can be shown that people are choosing to feel insulted, which immediately means they can and should take responsibility for the way they are choosing to feel and not insist that others abide by their subjective views. Now, I will add, and I don't want to go into a long story there, that nobody goes out to, quote, insult people. If somebody said to me, Rob, your mom's a whore, I would probably go, well, you have no clue what you're talking about. You're just talking nonsense. It's not, I don't feel insulted. But then again, I've taken some time to overcome this sort of immediate feeling of, oh, you insulted my mom. I mean, most people, when you insult their mom, the immediate reaction is, hey, I feel insulted. And then they want to either verbally or physically respond in some way or other. And everybody's different. I respect that other people, may feel insulted, but it is a choice. That's the main thing. And so this is the channel I want to be on, and especially if you want to speak a lot, you'll see some other videos here. I posted a video here. Here's a lovely one, and this was Essence of Thought doing a fairly good job of exposing my good friend Sabur there in a video, and he goes through a lot there. And there were lots of comments here. This guy was quite. You can see there, he's no longer part of the group now. I haven't kicked him. I don't believe anybody else would have done so. So he's probably just left. So again, that may happen. So Muslims will join and then they'll leave if the conversation gets a bit hot for them. So you'll definitely get to be able to talk more if you come into this particular group here. As I say, at the moment, there's not as many people in there, but go on to both and do what Hassan is doing on this Speaker's Corner channel here. Hassan is just asking questions. I'll see if I can find a few for you. Oops, that's the Prime one. I don't want the Prime. I want the other one, this one here. Group this is the big one with 2,000 members in there. And you'll see here, you'll get all kinds of funny things as well. There we go. So there's a great example. There's Hassan in there. Did God make the evidence for Islam so clear and obvious no sane person could deny it? Or did he leave room for reasonable doubt? If the latter, then surely punishing unbelievers is unjust. So you can see the way he's phrasing questions there, which are, incredibly good and totally rational questions to ask. And then you get, tons of different comments there that you can go read through. So again, I encourage you to go in there. Just be aware though, and we'll see how long Hassan's in there and see whether somebody makes an excuse to boot him out as well. But at the moment, he's asking sane questions, and at some point he's responding. Every now and again, he'll respond when he gets a chance. Bear in mind, there's a lot more Muslims on here than there are. There you go. There's a response there, and so on. So if you have a Facebook account and you don't mind putting it in there, then join these groups if you are interested in a discussion, especially if you're a non-believer, because you'll definitely get plenty of responses. So there we go. I just wanted to share those two groups because that might be useful for those who are interested. So everybody's been very quiet. Your thoughts, any further thoughts there from any of you guys? Because we can move on to other things, but I wanted to cover this because I did think that there was definitely censorship, and it's clearly happened. The Sai guys tried to make amends by creating another group, and I specifically said to him, hey, you need to invite all the other Muslims. It's no good we have, another official Speaker's Corner group, which is the majority non-believers, because then you'll hardly ever get a response from a believer, or if you do, as seemingly happened there in one of the comments that I made, then they just leave. So it's no good having, 2,000 members. You're going to get some responses when you only have, the other channel here with whatever the number is, 75 members. You're really not going to get too many people coming in. Anybody there? You guys still there?
Speaker's Corner Hyde Park request was sent, but not approved yet. But the official Speaker's Corner Prime Hyde Park London has been approved as being joined.
Okay, so you've joined that one. Have you? Okay, great. So there you go. Try and join there. The bigger one is going to take some time because there's admins and they will approve it. So there you go. I'm going to welcome in Raj. I think there's a gentleman by the name of Raj. I'm not sure if it's the same Raj from down in Speaker's Corner. It may well be. He's asked to join. He's friended me on Facebook, so we may get another panelist in here shortly. TJ, you've been very quiet there as well. So have you got any thoughts on what you've heard about in regards to the censorship, etc.?
I'm not surprised. That group is, from what I've seen, because they just can't take it. Like any sort of counter arguments or any sort of, questions and stuff like that, they automatically just label you a bigot, and, these things. So I'm not surprised by it. That group is not a free speech group. It's just another format to, guys and to, prove the quote unquote truth of Islam. So,
yeah.
Especially try asking a tough question. Like, could you please explain, Quran chapter 65 verse 4 that justifies, marriage and having sex with prepubescent girls, and then I'm sure they'll go crazy. So
yeah, join it and see what happens. You'll get all manner of responses there.
Yeah, I'm sure. I'll just quote the verse and I'll just quote some sort of commentary on it, and then we'll see what happens.
Come on,
Yeah.
I was kicked from the biggest forum, the biggest Islamic forum, Sunnah.com. They kicked me for exactly this.
Maybe bring up apostasy and the apostasy laws in many sort of Islamic countries, and we'll see what happens there too. So yeah, and then obviously I could go the route of are Shias Muslims or not, or is this group Muslim, is that group Muslim, why there's so many divisions if Islam is true. I could go that route as well. So
Yeah.
there's so many questions that we could ask collectively. And I'm sure will they get banned, shut down, or called hate mongers and bigots and stuff. So.
And we've got another gentleman who's joined us here. His name is Raj. I think it is Raj from Speaker's Corner. Raj, good evening. Welcome to you. I think you've muted yourself there.
Oh, sorry. Cleaning his rifle. Hello?
Hello. There we go. Yes, there we go.
Can you hear me?
We can indeed. Yes, go ahead.
The rifle isn't really a rifle. It's actually a 150-year-old shotgun from the last Maharaja of Punjab. So a lot of people think I'm kind of just holding a random shotgun, which it's not. So one of the reasons I wanted to come on is because Steve came on last week, and I heard you kind of mention my name in the beginning. So I thought I'd just kind of hop on because I've got quite an interesting story of maybe 40 years worth of seeing the Muslim community kind of transform from kind of like a secular kind of community more into a real kind of religious Islamic community, which I think is problematic in the long run. So if anyone wants to ask me a question.
Before you go there, Rash, I just want to check in. Yeah. Number one, you've got a bit of a noise in the background. Are you driving, or is there a fan, or is there something going on? Because I can hear like a bit of a noise.
It's actually my computer. It's
oh, right. Is that what's going so loudly? Yeah. Okay. Can you just tell people a little bit about yourself? Because I think some people who are watching would have seen you or heard about you or watched you at Speaker's Corner. But just tell people, obviously, you're a Sikh, and share a little bit about you, whatever you're comfortable to do, and then feel free to go in.
Yeah. Just cut me off if I start rambling, because I have a tendency to kind of jabber on a bit.
Don't worry, I'm sure Stops will do that, or I will. Stops more than me.
So basically, I've lived in a majority Muslim area. I was only Sikh in my school, apart from one or two others, and I never had any issues. The Muslim community was very secular then. I could say Happy Christmas without kind of being scared that they're going to be sent to hell. So they were very moderate during that time. Then I just slowly saw in the 90s a real kind of hardcore element of kind of Islamism or radicalism start entering, and I bumped into Hizb ut-Tahrir when I was I think around 19 in 1992, and actually Majid Nawaz, he threatened to kill me once because we set up a Sikh society at my college at Eastern College, and so I saw them firsthand for the first time kind of how radical Islam could be, and it resulted in a lot of violence. Friends of mine got beaten up, and it kind of culminated in a black guy being stabbed in the heart for blaspheming Eid. So a lot of people don't really know that. If you Google Eastern College 1992, you would realise that it was pretty violent there. Over the years, I just started getting really concerned about Muslims kind of distancing themselves from the kind of wider community. And I think the epiphany was like probably in last year, where I kind of just like snapped in a way, because as a Sikh, most people can't tell the difference between a Muslim and a Sikh, especially when I'm wearing my turban. So when a terrorist attack happens, I get stared up just as much as anybody else. And so I was kind of getting really fed up. I kind of give the analogy of, you've got the Sikh community and you've got the Muslim community, and we're kind of like twin brothers, and we look identical. And so imagine one brother's always misbehaving, another brother's always trying his hardest, trying to fit in and do what he needs to do. But every time he goes out, he gets mistaken for the naughty brother. And you get to a point where you're like, oh, I want to start distancing myself from that naughty brother. And that's the kind of stage that I'm at. And so I made a video in, I think in June, and it's got 120,000 views. And it's called, I Moved to the UK, not Afghanistan. I didn't realize the guy that I was speaking to was called Peter Sweden, which is kind of a hardcore some people say he's a racist. I don't know. So from that video, I've just got the label Tommy Robbins saying that I'm a Nazi, that I'm racist. I think if people listen to the video and really listen to it, they'll realize that I'm putting up some very, very kind of logical points that if you take religion out of it, you know, or you're kind of like...
Have you got a link to that video at all, Raj, that people can watch it?
Yeah, so if you just type in, I moved to the UK, not Afghanistan, it's around 12 minutes. Journey as well.
The title is I've Moved to the UK.
Yeah, I moved to the UK, not Afghanistan. So it's just me basically saying that, you know, when my parents come down, we didn't come here to live in Afghanistan. We came here to live in the UK. And there's things about the UK that, you know, I love. And so I don't want, you know, freedom of speech, freedom of religion, and all of these things seem to be kind of being eroded by Islamic culture, in my opinion. And in my opinion, it's pretty dangerous. One of the things I do want to mention, because a lot of people say I hate Muslims. I'm called a hate preacher. Ali Darwa's called me a hate preacher and likened me to ISIS, even though I've not beheaded anyone last time I saw. So I have a lot of hate, and I don't hate Muslims. I'm frustrated with Muslims because they don't take responsibility when things go wrong. My cousin, one thing I do want to point out, the grooming epidemic, one of the things that made me quite hardcore towards Muslims was my cousin was groomed. She's a Sikh girl, and a lot of people don't realize Sikhs have been being groomed for 30 years. We've been trying to say to people that, you know, the Pakistani community targets our girls. And one of my cousins was prostituted out by 6 Muslim guys who were Pakistani. And yeah, I admit that kind of hardened my heart. But I think the thing that really hardened it was last year when the terrorist attacks happened. And I think that kind of I was just like fed up. You know, that's when I done that particular interview. It was actually 2 days after. And then I started going Speaker's Corner because I watched Speaker's Corner religiously for like a year. And then I started seeing the Sarah situation. And I was like, all right, seems like, you know, freedom of speech is really being impaired at Speaker's Corner. So I just went down there on an off chance one day, thinking I'd never return. I didn't even wear my turban because I didn't want to be seen as a Sikh. And then I started, I was talking to a guy called Daniel, who's one of the Christian preachers. And I had Mansour, that I don't want to be rude, but he's probably one of the worst people. All right, so I'll try and, what I might do is restart my computer in a minute, yeah, because then it will stop the fan from going too loud.
Yeah, I think if you do that and then just bring up the browser that you connected with, don't load anything else, and that might help a little bit.
For the for like a mobile, for a smartphone or something.
Yeah. I don't know what will happen. My computer's been on all day, so what I normally do is when it starts blowing up like this, it will. What I do is just restart the thing. So what I might do is, should I restart it now and then come back on, or?
Yeah, just restart it now and then come back in. You've got the link if you need it again.
If you had a headset or a microphone or something.
Unfortunately not. No, I'll have to buy one, but at the moment, I
what
know
about
what to do anyway. So.
Can you connect to the mobile phone?
I haven't. Don't worry, this will be sorted out once I restart the sound.
Cool.
Okay,
sure. Cool.
I'll just
come back in, or
so give me a minute.
Yeah. The link will still be in your Facebook Messenger chat when you restart.
Let me just restart it. Take me around 5 minutes. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, no worries. Go for it. Cool. So we'll obviously chat a little bit more to Raj. I saw him come in, I don't know, a couple of months back and so forth, and obviously he's had a few conversations. But that goes back to the topic that we're talking about, because he mentioned it there. You know, you're a hate preacher. This for me, this nonsense of claiming hate preacher, what they're jumping on, of course, is as Abu would know, is the far left. So you can smear people with all kinds of ad hominems and not address what they have to say. So anybody that in particular critiques like Jay Smith. Now, I don't agree with everything Jay Smith does or says, but he's obviously been an ardent critic with verses, brings the Qur'ans, etc. And if they want to stand up and challenge him, which some of the Muslims have done, absolutely fine. But now, of course, Jay Smith, because he's left, or even before he's left, to be fair, the Muslims were saying, oh, he's a hate preacher. And all of his people that follow him are all considered hate preachers. The ladies that are down there, Lizzie and Hatton or whatever it is, no matter how challenging her voice might be, they're all considered, hate preachers. And this is, we could say the same about Muslims. You guys you all promote hate. You don't promote inclusion. You promote division. So you're all hate preachers. Well, you come down, you're doing hate. So
but
let's
it's
just
also
drop the
the
hate.
problem. It's also the problem, I think, like guilt by association. He said that he had some chat with some guy that, right, I don't know if it's rightly or unjustly, was branded as some kind of racist. And then because he chatted to him, like he is now also a racist.
Yes, I think Raj also mentioned he went to at the time, one of the Tommy Robinson events. I can't remember what it was, to go and see what it's all about. I mean, if I went to go listen to a Muslim preacher, Zakir Naik, God forbid, goodness forbid, whatever term you want to use, that wouldn't make me a Muslim or a Muslim sympathizer or whatever the case is. If you go and listen to somebody, but of course, the moment you listen to somebody, in some people's weird, demented minds, that means you support them. So if I went to go listen or whatever the case is, or if I say, hey, Tommy Robinson made sense on this point or that point, immediately you say anything, from these supposed smeared people, then you get smeared with the same brush. And unfortunately, it's effective. It's, of course, intellectually disreputable, dishonest, disingenuous. But hey, the people that are doing this don't care about that. As long as they shout loud enough and often enough, they think they're going to make sense. And unfortunately,
I wish it was the opposite way also. I think, like, I realized that I was, what is it? I'm 3 steps away from Barack Obama, because Barack Obama knew a guy that knows a guy that I know. So therefore, everything that Barack Obama does is should also be attributed to me. If he did any God, I'm not sure TJ Singh would agree with that. But you see what I'm saying? It only works one way. Like, if you
repeat that again, Abu? Could you repeat that?
If you like, no, I've said that I realized now that I was 3 steps away from Barack Obama, because Barack Obama knows guys who knows the guys that I know. So therefore, everything that Obama does, like, I should get part of the Nobel Peace Prize, for example. But it never works the other way. Like, if I like a video of, say, Gad Saad, and Gad Saad,
Gad is a legend. He's a legend.
Yeah, the Godfather. And the Godfather, he chats with a guy, and that in return chats with another guy that knows another guy that is a full-out Nazi. That means that the link goes back to me. I mean,
it's guilt by association. Yeah, just multiple versions of it.
If that would work, then I should get part of the Nobel Peace Prize.
And the other side of it is they're very happy to say, hey, don't grant this hate preach or this hate monger a platform. But it's okay when their one does it, because, of course, they don't think that their one is preaching hate or nonsense or whatever the case is, or division or whatever the case is. So it's a completely one-way street, inconsistent, special pleading, any of those sort of logical fallacies you can possibly throw. But, of course, and that's something that Bill Warner said, stops, and you have said it many times, this is dualistic. They just don't seem to mind if there are contradictions. To them, if they can rationalize it somehow, contradiction is just not a problem to them. Whether you point it out, whatever, that something comes up there, the brain is able to somehow dissolve the contradiction in their own mind, and they just carry on. So this whole dualistic nature, it's in some cases we're just not having interaction with rational people. They are irrational, by definition. If you don't accept fallacies are a problem, then you're irrational. It's not somebody that we can have irrational, because they won't be convinced by anything. We all think, oh, if we bring good arguments and evidence, then people would be convinced. But the people who are irrational, you're just never going to get anywhere. But as we've always said, the useful part of it is to have that conversation and let viewers decide. Because those people who are irrational, they're going to walk away mind-bendingly even more devout than before they started and I've heard that. There's been comments, people have said it. Ali Dawa says it, of all people. Hey, I walk away, I'm more convinced Islam is true having spoken to you than before. And you just go, oh my goodness, this person is beyond any rational conversation. And so it's in no way are we trying to convince them, but we are trying to show that the listeners, viewers, the problems. That's all we can do.
Well, I mean, even beyond that point, I think that, like, when it comes to religion in general, I mean, like, we have to take the, internal aspect seriously about how it, makes the believer feel, and not just, how it affects their worldview or their views on life or like the afterlife or whatever, but the internal aspect of it. I think that a lot of secularists and atheists don't take that seriously. And
in what way should we, or how should we take it seriously, or what should we do differently, do you think?
I don't know if there's something. I don't know if there's anything that we can do, because if we deny the premise to begin with, then everything else falls apart. So, I think taking it seriously in terms of their beliefs, because there's a lot of atheists, especially on the left, who think it's just nonsense and everything, and so they just automatically assume that terrorism has to do with poverty, not with belief itself.
You're dropping in and out, TJ, so we can hear you, then it goes very soft like this. Then you're back again. I'm not sure if that's an ongoing thing. Are you on what sort of device are you connecting with?
I'm on my laptop right now. I'm on my Dell. Let me see if I can fix my mic.
Have you got a headset mic, or are you just talking directly into the laptop?
I'm talking directly into the laptop. Let me see if I can find my headphones. Just give me a second.
Yeah, I think that might be useful, yeah. Because it sounds like your fan is also running there.
I don't think it's the fan. I think it's the... Or maybe it's the fan too, but I think it's... what's it called? Autocorrect audio. He has to turn off the autocorrect audio on his Mac computer.
Okay. Oh, I thought he said he had a Dell. He's got a Windows computer.
You got a Windows computer now?
Well, that's what I thought I heard TJ say. I've got a Dell. Dell or Windows.
Maybe it's some settings.
Anyway.
When did Apple buy Dell?
Yeah, exactly. Although you can do Hackintosh, but we won't go there.
Is this better?
We're still getting it's still getting the background noise. We'll just see if you talk a little bit, whether that keeps you from dropping out at all.
Yeah.
All right. No, just come back to my original point. A lot of leftists, atheists, like, they just don't take the doctrine seriously, but then they think that they just, I don't know, because I've read a lot of studies and stuff like that where they just attribute terrorism to poverty, economics, other stuff, and because they just can't believe the doctrine, that people will take it seriously. And
Yeah, you've dropped out.
I think that's a very huge mistake to do that. I think we have to, even if we don't take these beliefs seriously, we should at least take the doctrine seriously and what these doctrines prescribe.
It would be interesting to look in his settings.
TJ, you've gone almost mute again. We can't hear you.
Yeah.
Have you got another way you can connect to the Hangout?
Let me check my settings on my mic. Hold on.
It's more than that. I don't know if it's your connection there. I don't know how strong your connection is, but you speak and then
I don't think it's the
then you're back
connection.
again.
I think it's the settings. I wish I could connect to.
Maybe Abby, you can do it after the show at some point. Use TeamViewer or something and see if you can
I
help
think it's the
TJ.
gain control.
Yeah, or switch over to Mac and then you won't have that problem. Although Stops one is working, so maybe. But you got a new computer, Stop, so that helps, I guess, as well. Yeah, I think to your point, TJ, people on the left actually, because they either haven't met these Muslims or they haven't taken the time to look into it, they don't think that these people take the doctrine seriously. So when some of these people like ISIS or whoever say they do what they believe, they go, no, that can't be the truth. There's some other reason. They're just using that as a cover. Obviously, not everybody's claiming to be like ISIS, but they just dismiss everybody as they don't believe this. This is just a cover story for them. Even when the people are prepared to die for it. I mean, that's pretty extreme, and some of us just take them at their word. Now, it could be that a few of them are lying or whatever the case may be, but are they all lying? Are they all taking it? No. And if what they're doing matches what the Qur'an or Hadiths or some of the history says, then that's good reason to take it seriously, but they will find every reason not to. And they have allies with, as you know, with some of the so-called moderate Muslims in the US, for whom everything else is a factor, but not their beliefs.
Yeah, exactly.
And unfortunately, these people are taken seriously as well, which is unfortunate.
Yeah, because like all those passages, calling for believers to like kill infidels and stuff like that. It's just going to take one time for somebody to take those verses literally and actually apply them in their surroundings. So to me, it's obviously not every single Muslim is going to act on that, but in the day, all it's going to take is for somebody to actually take it literally to like the to me, it's not a question of like all Muslims being terrorists or anything like that. It's the books, it's the texts, it's the commentaries. Is that when somebody takes it literally and then takes it into their own hands, and that can happen at any point in time. So, I think that's the biggest concern that we have to deal with, unfortunately.
Yeah, I wonder if Stops and Abu can talk on what Muhammad supposedly said on his deathbed, because some Muslims have claimed that he said that he kind of negated all the violence and basically said, "Hey, be good to your fellow man from here on out." Or words to that effect.
Nobody knows what he said. There are so many different versions.
No. On the deathbed, he was talking about salah. You should do prayer. It was like
And you should
salah.
do this and do this. But come on, Abu, how many different versions of that last sermon do you know?
We're talking about his deathbed.
I don't know about that, but he was not talking about things like that. He was talking about the importance of salah and things like that.
And kill the infidels.
Yeah, I thought he said in like one of the hadiths, like when he was on his deathbed, he said like to drive the
Jews off the land.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Also, like take off the infidels from the Arabian Peninsula.
Mm-hmm. So there you go.
Well, 500 different versions of this. I mean, everybody says, "Oh, but look what Muhammad said on the." And then you look at this and you see this is a totally different version. The first two sentences are always the same, and then they vary. It's like the 99 names; they're all the same. They start off the same way, and then they all differ.
Welcome back, Raj. Hopefully you sound a bit better now. TJ, when you're not speaking, if you could just mute yourself, because I can definitely hear something in the background there. I just want to check if it's Raj or if it's you.
It's me, probably.
Raj, go ahead.
I tried to get it to stop. It was actually okay for a minute, but it started to whirl up again. I'm going to try and get it onto my phone instead. How bad is it now, though?
I mean, we can still hear you, but there's definitely enough of a background noise that you're not clear in that sense. I mean, I can hear you. So if you can get yourself closer to the mic and speak louder, then people will be able to hear you.
What about now then?
Better.
Yeah, I mean, we can hear you.
All right. So I'm not sure how much longer you want me to.
Well, let me ask you a few questions, and maybe you can share. Because how long ago did you come to Speaker's Corner? Did you say?
Probably I think I come in October.
Okay, maybe you can respond, because I've seen a few claims against you, and you're obviously not really given time to respond, from Tawheed to hijab to Ali Dawa, etc. That you say one thing to this person and another thing to somebody else, so you're a snake. This is, of course, I don't take that seriously, but now you've got a chance to respond to those claims, because obviously you don't get a chance there.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, because I watched Speaker's Corner for such a long time, I kind of thought I knew certain people. It's hard to describe. So when I went into the park, I was a little bit in awe of, like, I really loved Steve. So when I met Steve, I said, I love Steve. He's my favorite. I really love Ty as well. And so when I went into Speaker's Corner, I was telling a lot of people that they're my favorite speakers, and in the way they wore speakers. So people started saying, "Oh, you're a snake," because you're telling one person you love them, and then you're telling another person they're your favorites. It was just more that I've got lots of favorites, and I should have probably clarified that. In terms of Ali Dawa and Muhammad Hijab, and obviously Muhammad Tawheed threatened to knock me out. Just around what?
Really? Was that caught on camera?
Please, because he surrounded me in, I think it was just mid-November, no, beginning of November, and he said to me, "Let's go around the corner." And I was like, "What to do? What?" He said, "Well, let's go around the corner. Let's go." And I was like, "All right." And they all surrounded me, like 30 of them, and he was saying, "Well, I'm going to knock you out." He's right in my face.
Was this in Speaker's Corner, or did you go around the corner now? Quote unquote.
No, I didn't go around the corner because you'd be crazy too, because I was all by myself. and there was like 30 people around me. So I reported that to the police in front of him, because as soon as the police pulled up, I'm not going to do it behind their back. And he uploaded, for some reason, he filmed me talking to the police and uploaded it. It's online. I'll send you a link. It's pretty weird because it started harassing me when I'm talking to the police, which kind of proved my case with the police that I was being harassed. So they kind of incriminate themselves.
He will deny that he threatened you, and coincidentally, we don't have that on video.
Yeah.
Same as when
Sarah
conveniently supposedly threatened him, but that's not on video, even though there were 5 cameras watching.
Well, you got Leon from COE, who everyone respects, and he was there when he saw it. Also, there's a guy called he comes on here actually, and he's Dawa Digital.
Yes, I know him. Yeah.
And if he's on there, he's a snake. He threatened to knock me out as well, in front of everybody. Loads of people saw that one. So he started piping up around 10 minutes after Muhammad Taweed threatened me. And so I reported both of them to the police. My home address has been put online, pictures of my family. And I don't think I've really said anything that bad, to be honest with you.
Well, that's what I was going to ask you. What do you remember saying that could have invoked this? Now, obviously, there's no reason that people should be doing this.
Yeah.
But I'm trying to get from you as honestly as you can, just so that we can understand what might have provoked it.
All right, I'm going to be honest with you. I'm a pretty odd character. I don't really have any friends. I don't really like people, if I'm being honest with you. So some people get the wrong end of the stick with me. I'm very blunt with everybody, even the Sikh community, everyone. And so when I went to Speaker's Corner, I have a bit of a weird sense of humor as well, very dark. And so I think I just got under people's skins, which is kind of one of my talents, if I'm being honest with you. I don't like it. I'm aware that I have a lot of kind of personality traits that a lot of people don't like. So I don't try to go there to agitate people, but I'm just asking questions. Like one of them was that I tried to speak to Adnan Rashid, and which was about the validity of the hadiths and, you know, some of the reliability. And I thought I made a good point, but a lot of people thought I was just nitpicking. Also, I bring up the grooming situation quite a lot. I challenged Muhammad Hijab to a debate about it, because he had a debate where he's saying that, you know, there's no causation. Causation isn't necessarily correlation isn't necessarily causation, or vice versa. And so I thought I could kind of prove him to be wrong on that, because I've got so many statistics on how, you know, the grooming epidemic isn't Sikhs are not involved, but they're labeled as Asian. So there's a lot of things I bring up, and because I'm the only Sikh there and I've got a turban on, I think because I'm brown as well. I said this in the beginning. I said straight away, as soon as I went there to the chemic guys, I said, because I'm Asian, I will get a lot of heat very quickly, because they're going to see me as an easy target, because I'm always by myself.
Raj, can I just ask something?
Yeah.
Oh, brilliant. Because you said something that I think is quite important for us.
Yeah.
You said that Adnan Rashid said to you, because I think I remember the video, that you were talking about the hadiths. Is that the video where he says all the hadiths for us are like 100% true, and we need to treat them almost like scripture, and it's 100%, not 99, but 100. Is that the one?
Yeah, that's the one. I'm talking because I don't really have a problem with Shias, if I'm being honest. So if there's any Shias there, definitely. I don't have a problem with all Islam, because I'm not an atheist. I believe in Sikhism. And so
okay, no, that's fine.
But the thing is, about the reason why I had a problem with Adnan Rashid, because he was talking about the reliability of the hadiths, and I was trying to say to him that if most of Aisha's hadiths are when she's by herself with Muhammad, and I was like, if she's the only person that's kind of reciting the hadiths to somebody else, and she's not fallible, I mean, she's fallible. And I said, so all of those hadiths, when somebody is alone with Muhammad, should be taken out of the hadiths, because I think the hadiths are the biggest problem in Islam, in my opinion.
I agree. I took this little section where he said we are believing hadith 100%, not 99, but 100. And I'm going to use that. I was just trying to make sure that this is the one, because this is like really important to understand the whole story of Islam, exactly what you are pointing out now.
Yeah,
I also just want to
Yeah, done.
Sorry, Raj, I just want to welcome Steve in, and Steve, maybe you can corroborate the threats made against Raj.
Is
Hi,
this
folks.
Steve?
Hi, Raj.
How you doing, Steve?
I'm doing well. Yeah, no, Rob,
I heard you last time.
I can certainly confirm I witnessed the Dawa digital guy, the guy with glasses and a little beard threatening Raj.
Mosan.
Can you hear me?
Good.
And
Yes, we can. Yep, cool.
There is a video of Muhammad Tawhid surrounding me with 30 people, calling me a snake, that I'm a kuffar. I'll be honest with you, Muhammad Tawhid is probably the most dangerous person at Speaker's Corner. I think his video about Christmas is pure hate. I think if people don't understand what he's saying, they just listen to it and think, oh, he's just spewing a little bit of hate. But no, I think he's going against national security, in my opinion. He's telling Muslims that Sharia is above the police. He's calling the UK Dar al-Kufar, in my opinion, land of war. He's saying to hate the non-Muslims, to hate Kufar, to hate Kuf, and to hate Christmas. So I think he stepped way over the mark of what's acceptable in Speaker's Corner. And I'm surprised he's still kind of attending. And others, so if any of you are there, I've spoken to them, I said, you need to pull him up, but they won't pull him up. And this is the biggest problem with the Muslim community. They don't seem to pull up people when they're doing something wrong. I don't know if other people agree with me on that. That's one of the biggest issues I've had with the Islamic community, in my opinion.
Raj, were you there last Sunday?
Yeah, I was, yeah.
Because I wasn't, but I saw quite a few videos of quite a few Shias turning up.
I love when the Shias turn up.
And certainly the videos online, they were saying that the regular Sunnis were refusing to debate anything with them. I don't know.
I'll tell you the difference between Shias and Sunnis, in my opinion. Now, they kind of believe in similar things, but the difference with Shias is that you can have a very good conversation, really criticize. I've had a conversation with Shia Blade Runner, which is online, born into Islam. He never at one time got aggressive, at one time started to attack me, calling me a hate preacher, and he gave some good rebuttals to what I was saying. But when it comes to Sunnis, the Salafi, as soon as you start criticizing, that's it, you're a hate preacher. I've been called a Nazi. I don't know even if that's possible as a Sikh.
Yes, we said when you were offline, Raj, we were talking about it because you did say that you went to a Tommy Robinson event to listen to what he had to say. It's the same as if I went to listen to Zakir Naik. That doesn't mean I'm a Muslim.
No. I need to clarify this because I've said this like a million times. But they've got pictures of me at an EDL rally saying it's an EDL rally, and it wasn't. It was an anti-fascist rally that happened to be. I just happened to be near. I was in the city 2 days after the terrorist attacks in Manchester. I'm an artist, so I was at an exhibition, and as I walked out, there was like 500 police, and so I just went over to see what was going on, and there was an anti-fascist march, and I was speaking to them. I just had a conversation saying, look, I don't agree with the EDL, but they got legitimate concerns about national security and the grooming epidemic. And so I followed the march, and as I got to the end, the EDL was at the end, and there's a guy called Peter Sweden, who I didn't know who he was. He just said, look, do you want to do a conversation? You're Asian. What's your take on it? And then I just let loose because I don't believe in kind of sugarcoating things. I've had an experience of Islamic extremism. I've been attacked 5 times in the UK with my turban knocked on. It's not by white people, it's by Muslims.
Really?
My cousin was groomed. Yeah, so I've been threatened by Hizb ut-Tahrir to be killed. I've been beaten up, I had my turban knocked off. And so I've experienced it firsthand that, because a lot of people say, look, they're your brown brothers. I said, no, I don't care about that. I said, it's not white people beating me up. It's not white people raping my cousin. And so they find, even the Sikh community finds me controversial. And my reputation has kind of taken a hit. I actually was on a train to Slough, and I get pulled up and outside quite a lot now. I've been called Tommy Robinson in Asda. I was on a train and a Salafi just come over and sat with me and started asking, why do you hate Muslims? I said, look, I don't hate Muslims. I just hate the ideology or dislike certain parts of the ideology. One thing I just want to clarify just before I go on, my kind of moral stance is that I'm a vegetarian who used to be a vegan. I'm strongly against animal cruelty, so halal is out the question. I'm completely against capital punishment of any kind. even the American judicial system, you know, because I think we can make mistakes. And so that goes against the Sharia. So a lot of people think when I criticize Islam, I'm not criticizing Islam, I'm criticizing bad ideas, things that I think are wrong. It just happens to be that Islam, like Sam Harris said, is the mother load of bad ideas. And so I might be paraphrasing it. And so a lot of Muslims think I'm attacking them, but I'm just attacking ideas that I disagree with on a moral ground.
Well, that's what we're all doing here. It's the bad ideas. I don't think any of us, well, and Stops, if anybody like yourself and Stops who have been physically attacked and, you know, potentially you have your life, of anybody, you would be more likely to be the guys that would hate Muslims. But even if you hated just your attackers, that would be fair enough. But none of you, and I've never heard any rational critic of Islam say, oh, we hate all Muslims. That's just irrational. I know many Muslims. I'm sure everybody in this panel knows Muslims, and you could have dinner, you could invite them over.
I mean, there's a guy, Extremely Balanced TV, and he's a great guy. I've had so many interviews with him. Really decent guy. So there's a lot of great Muslims, but the problem I have, which I've seen all my life, is from an Asian perspective. I've got a different perspective because I'm kind of in the group and I'm not. I can speak the same language as Pakistanis, but I'm not within the group. And so I have this kind of like an alternative view that most people don't see. And one of the things I've always realized that they never pull their own community out. One of the things about Sikhs is that when a Sikh person is doing something wrong, everyone jumps on their back. I mean, I've had so many messages about people saying they're going to come down to Speaker's Corner to sort me out. As people have actually come to Speaker's Corner to sort me out. There's a guy called Delochan that's looking for me, and all these comments. So although I don't agree with them, but when I still appreciate the fact that when they think someone's doing something wrong, they will publicly come out and condemn them. Whereas the Muslim community, when I was threatened, nobody condemned it. You know, it was in front of everyone's faces. No one condemned it. Now I have to wear a GoPro, obviously, because, you know, I just want to capture anything if anything happens. And this is the biggest issue. This is why the grooming epidemic carries on. And this is why terrorism is hard to combat, because a lot of Muslims don't want to dob in their own Muslim brothers over the kuffar. I don't know if other people have, if there's a Muslim on there or other people agree with that, but that's just my kind of a perspective on it.
Cool. No, that's good.
Another question: do you consider Sikhism to be like grouped or base or something in Islam?
All right. The thing is, one thing I need to say is, like Muslims, we have a growing tendency in Sikhism for extremism. And one thing I've realized: anything I talk about in terms of Sikhism tends to get me a lot of flack. And I want to say something that. Just give a disclaimer. I am not the person to talk about Sikhism in terms of theology. I don't really believe in talking about beliefs, in my opinion. I think it's pointless. But yeah, I mean, we have Sikhism is not a pacifistic religion, so we do have certain commonalities. I would say that the truth is universal, so you'll have truths in all religions. So we have slight connections to most other faiths in terms of what the truth is. So one God. Sikhs believe in reincarnation. We don't believe that there's only one path to God, but multiple. So you don't have to be a Sikh to go to God. We just feel it's probably the best way to get to God and the easiest way. So it's a dharmic religion. So it's not as condemning as the Abrahamic religion, where you've only got one chance to go to heaven, and that's it. Whereas we believe in reincarnation, so we have multiple chances of kind of trying to attain the oneness with God. So I don't know if that answers your question. But
yes, it does. Thank you.
Yeah. So how's it been in the park then? Do you still feel like a great deal of tension and so on? You said you've got a GoPro with you, which is, you know, good way to do it. And probably...
I've been ignoring certain people like Mosam from Darwa Digital, the biggest snake in the park. Sorry if I'm being rude, because I don't like people that are disingenuous. They pretend to be nice on camera, but start threatening people off camera when they got a group with them. So I have a real disdain. At least with Muhammad Taweed, he's at least shows that he's a bad guy, and I can see it. The people that pretend they're nice when they're not are the ones that I really dislike. And I've been there. A lot of flack has been taken off me. Thank you, Tan. There's a guy called Tan now. He's made, everyone says I look like a pussycat compared to him. So
yes, he's a passionate critic. I've seen a few videos of his.
I don't agree with him, but I've spoken to him for 20 minutes off camera. He's not what you see on camera. He's a very intelligent, articulate guy. Gets very passionate when he's kind of trolling everyone, if I'm being honest with you. Even though I think he believes what he says, but he's a very, very clever guy. So yeah, it hasn't been as bad. But I have not bumped into certain characters like Tawhid since November. So I don't know. I'm going to be going back on Sunday. So yeah, but
you are going on Sunday, are you?
Yeah, I'm going on Sunday. Yeah.
Okay, good. Yeah, well, have you got a channel? Because you should post any videos you have of you having a conversation. Because you know, obviously, and I used to do the same. Obviously, post the videos, but I used to avoid a few people like Tawhid, Hamid. I mean, you lose brain cells having any sort of interaction with them. So that's like going there and smoking weed. In fact, probably weed is better for you than having a conversation with those two in particular. But I do the same. So I avoid certain people because it like goes down. It's like going to speak to children. You know, and no disrespect to children.
Have the same issue. But you still had the same issue with Mohammed Hijab. I like the guy. I think he's an intelligent guy, but they're saying the exact same thing.
You might have a disagreement there with Stops or myself.
Yeah. So I don't consider myself an intellectual or someone that reads a lot of books. So I can see how, you know, Mohammed Hijab, I've realized when he's talking to a layperson, he can come across as very intelligent. I've seen him talk to some people that know their stuff. And I think they called him up in it, and then you start realizing he uses a lot of long words and literature that he's read to kind of hoodwink people. And people like Ali Dawa talks about extremism, but you know, if you look at the guy that he's Sheikh, he's one of the biggest extremists in the UK, Sheikh Haytham Al-Haddad. And so, you know, he calls me he's got a video of me saying that I'm like ISIS and Britain first, and you know, he's not taking it down yet, but he's apologized on camera, but it's still online with like 30,000 views. And so it's causing me issues when I go out because people are kind of calling me up on it, calling me a hate preacher and all that. So he doesn't realize he's kind of out.
Yeah, unfortunately, he's got over 100,000 viewers, which, you know, encourages him to go and make all kinds of videos. There was something he posted the other day with this sheikh telling him how to blow his nose or whatever it was, clean out his nose or whatever the case is. Like, I'm like, okay, I've wasted 3 minutes of my life that I can't get back again. That sort of thing. But unfortunately, you know, they're influential with the gullible and credulous Muslims. And unfortunately, they've got bigger channels, so they're reaching more people. And they're funded. I saw a video with them sitting in a studio the other day. I'm like, holy crap, where are these guys getting the money to go and talk in a studio? And then, like you say, when you have a conversation and you get a few intelligent people, be it Phil, be it that other atheist that called him out on objective morality, then they are like children without clothes on. They're standing there completely naked, have no clue, and they just
they don't put up videos where they're made to look stupid. I've done a video about the grooming epidemic and how I feel it's related to Islamic culture. And I thought I made a good point, which is that I'll try, mate. Can I make the point, or am I going to be talking too much?
No, carry on.
Go ahead.
The point is that it's not directly in the Quran that it says that you should groom, but because of the restrictions in Islam about not looking at women, if a woman's dressed in a particular way, she's less. The fact that the kuffar is clearly distinctive from the believer, and then you have all of this stuff that you can't shake women's hands, you can't look at them. If you've got a 16-year-old guy who's pretty horny or his hormones all over the place, and he's been told all this, you know, your brain's going to start becoming quite deviant. And so this is why you see that the Sikh community has no grooming epidemic, even though ethnically we're the same. If we've done a DNA test with the Pakistani community, I think I'd probably come at 99% the same, or even more. So why is it that the Sikh community is not going around grooming? I mean, out of 266 convictions since 2005, 233 have been Asian and 222 have been Muslim.
And how many have been called Muhammad?
Yeah, and I think it was like 49 that was called Muhammad. So I've done my statistics and I know, because I've experienced it firsthand, it's extremely frustrating. Not only are the Sikhs kind of labeled on the Asian, we're kind of like the model immigrant community. I love the UK, you know, and so I'm quite passionate. So when I come out, sometimes I might say, I've got a video where I'm saying I'm going to lock people up and put them in Guantanamo Bay and all this. I kind of regret saying that, and I apologize to the guy afterwards. But I do believe that there's a kind of a cancer in the UK of Islamism, maybe the Salafi strain, that needs to really be rooted out. And in a very, very kind of harsh way, if I'm being honest with you, like just lock them up and get them away from the young youth of the next generation. Otherwise, it's just going to keep getting worse and worse, in my opinion.
Yeah, I've been asked. I'm just going to. We'll come back to that point in a moment. I've just been asked in the chat to. Somebody sent me this, so I'm going to present this quickly to you. So here's the Islamist merry-go-round. Hopefully you can read that. Let me just see if I can bring it up a bit bigger so that people can see it. Here we go. So on the left, starting with, if Arabs, Muslims had the choice between two states, secular and religious, they would vote for religious and flee to the secular. That's Ali al-Wadi, Iraqi sociologist. And then in the new home, vote for the religious and flee to the secular, and so on, reminiscent of a virus. And then on the right-hand side, the merry-go-round. Get persecuted, go to a secular country, claim persecution because you can't establish Islamic State, create Islamic State, live in Islamic State, get persecuted, and so on. So that's... I
mean, one of the things, going to Speaker's Corner has really kind of opened my eyes up about the cognitive dissidence of Muslims. It's unbelievable when you speak to them. I was speaking to a young lady, Muslim with a hijab, very, very nice smile. Then I just asked her about homosexuality and what should happen to homosexuals in a Sharia state if all the requirements are met. And she had no qualm about saying they should be executed. And so, you know, I believe that if you think something, it's not as bad as doing something, but it is still pretty bad in my opinion. If you've got bad ideas in your head, you're going to pass them down to your kids are going to pass it down to your next kids. And we never know, one day in 400 years, you know, the UK could be under Sharia law. And these people that are propagating execution for what they consider sins is going to be dangerous in the future, in my opinion.
I'm surprised you were not immediately surrounded, because whenever non-believers happen to chat to a Muslim woman, you get the Dawa crew and other Muslims running seemingly to their defense, but they have no problem surrounding the Christians, I notice, and challenging them.
I was actually with Paul, the gay homosexual, and so worst people I've met, if I'm being honest with you, because I can't understand, because I'll just ask them the question, look, you have homosexual tendencies, you don't practice them, fair enough, but you know, try and explain to me, how do you justify the execution of someone who's homosexual? And he went into like a 30-minute tirade of the requirements that need to be met. Like, you need 4 witnesses. I said, look, just tell me, if everything's met, what is the end result? And he just wouldn't openly say it. So people like that, I know what they think, but they just kind of wiggle around everything, which I find very difficult when I speak to people like Paul. A lot of the white converts are some of the worst I've ever met. Hamza, that ginger guy, terrible. There's another.
Yeah, I've noticed the converts are far more fundamentalist than, you know, your average Muslim.
Well, me and Steve want to do kind of a chat about why is there so many gingers that are white converts, and so we should do that when we go down there. But people get angry when we say that. They say, you know, it's not happening. But if you look at a lot of the real kind of fundamentalist white converts, around, I think 70% of them seem to be ginger.
Because they were bullied as children.
Yeah, so they think this is a way to kind of like get revenge on the wider community.
Well, maybe I can ask a favor of you and Steve. Invite the Muslims onto the show. It's 8 p.m. every Friday. They can friend me on Facebook. They're on the Speaker's Corner, probably in the Facebook group. They can send a message. You can take an email address. We are happy to have a conversation with them here. But I suspect when I did it, and Mate M8 did a nice little edit of the video. So I went around looking for Muslims who were going to, I wanted to have a conversation with Christian Prince. I've watched him, and obviously he's Christian, so we have a disagreement there, but he's obviously quite knowledgeable, or seemingly knowledgeable, on Islam. And so I walked around the park, literally recording it, and asked them to, do they want to come online? And apart from hijab, who was kind of like, yeah, I might do, might not. He didn't openly deny it, but obviously never pitched up, or we've never been able to get him to come onto any show. The rest had all kinds of excuses, including Adnan and Mansour and so forth. So they want everybody to come down to the park, because seemingly in their mind, the park is the place for intellectual discussion. When, of course,
the thing is,
as we know,
I've had a debate with both Adnan and Mansour. The first day I went to the park, I was kind of like, I was talking to a guy called Daniel, and I was just undercover. I didn't have my turban because I didn't want to talk. And they surrounded him with, like, I think 5 cameras, the Dawa channels, and started calling him a hate preacher. And that's my first ever, I just jumped in and I said, look, why is he a hate preacher? And that's when it kind of escalated. And I had a conversation with Sword. If I'm being honest, if he's listening, he's one of the worst debaters there, because he gets the crowd. He only wins.
That's sorry?
He thinks he wins in his head. I said he thinks he wins because he has a crowd around him.
Who are you speaking about?
About Mansour.
Oh, right, yeah.
Yeah, so Mansour, when he's by himself, he's kind of like a little pussycat. But when he gets a crowd that is kind of jeering him, he turns into what he thinks is a line. So same with Adnan, he just doesn't accept any. I mean, Steve, you was there, wasn't you, when he wouldn't accept any of my references?
Yeah.
Yeah, so he expects me to accept all of his kind of references of authors and stuff like. Because I was trying to prove the Indian Holocaust, which, in my opinion, I said 300 million, but it's between 80 and 150 million were massacred over an 800-year period. And one of the reasons why there's so much tension between the Sikhs, Hindus, and Muslims is that the Muslims have never, ever, or most of them don't admit that the Holocaust happened. So on camera, they will say nothing happened in India, even though we know from first-hand accounts of Muslim called everything that they used to execute like 100,000 in like 2 or 3 days. And that's from their own sources. So Adnan Rashid doesn't ever accept anybody else's sources apart from his own, which is a problem.
I think, and obviously what I've done, and might be worth, you guys know it anyway, but is to highlight the tactics that are used and to call that out. Because otherwise it's just one person saying one thing, one saying another, and most viewers don't realize one thing or the other. And if they are Muslim, they're likely, very likely in most cases, to side with their Muslim brethren in the park. So it's a case of calling out and highlighting those things that, you know, each of those speakers, as you say. And I mean, Stops, I mean, if you go, you know, Stops can put his channel in, Raj, if you haven't seen, you know, Stops and other people as well have done many refutations of these people. They point out the faults that they say, as in like the factual errors, but also the tactics that are being used. And I think those are the things that one can highlight every single time you do it. But the show is here. Stops is dying to have people on here. All these guys that claim to know all of these things, bring them on the show here. Ask them to come on. They know me. Some of them might have heard about him, and they might class him in the same way as Christian Prince, which is kind of it's almost like a compliment, if anything. And they probably won't come on, but that would be worthwhile. But you know, they'll always say, "Oh, bring somebody to the park." I guess Stops would probably go down there if they paid for it.
I think one of the ways I got Adnan was I asked him, "Do you respect the author called Will Durant?" There's an author called Will Durant, and he said to me that Steve was there. He said, Will Durant's like a great author. He praises Islamic conquest and all of this." So I got him there because normally he would kind of refute any of my kind of references. And then I read a quote, which I might read just the beginning bit, of Will Durant from his book. And he said, Will Durant, in a book called The Story of Civilization, Our Oriental Heritage, said that the Muhammad conquest of India is probably the bloodiest story in history. The Islamic historians and scholars have recorded with great glee and pride the slaughter of Hindus, forced conversions, abduction of Hindu women and children to slave markets, and the destruction of temples carried out by the warriors of Islam. And millions of Hindus were converted to Islam by the sword during this period. Now, when I read this out to him, then instead what he said was, he then went on to say, well, I don't respect that author now. So he kind of like changes his mind if, you know, you bring evidence forward. 1 minute he loved the author, and as soon as I read that, he starts calling the author an Islamophobe. So there's no way of winning with someone like Adnan Rashid.
No. They're inconsistent. They'll use all the tactics they can come up with to avoid those sort of things.
Well, I think this is why they dislike me, because I'm Asian. They can't call me a racist, even though they do. And so they were calling Steve they were calling Steve a racist. And I know Steve's not a racist. But I said, Steve, like, you know, talking to me, and like, so I'm just trying to show up the ludicrous nature of their kind of defense all the time about shouting hate preacher or Islamophobe or stuff like that. Because half of the stuff, they can't call me a racist because I'm from the same continent with them, but they can still call me an Islamophobe and a hate preacher, which I don't think I am. I'm just bringing up
Can
facts.
I ask you a question? Are you also a sheep Zionist?
Yeah, I've had everything. They call me MI5 agent, that I'm a Zionist, that I'm this, I'm there to provoke people. And so I'm like, all right, fair enough. If that's what you think, then, you know, I just play into it. I've got a little GoPro, and I always pretend it's connected to MI5. So they get quite, I always say I'm taking a photo now. So I just kind of play with them and have a joke. So most of them are okay, but given a good point, that's when they get pretty agitated and start resorting to not violence, but intimidation. The guy was following me for like 3 hours just 3 weeks ago, and
but in the park or outside the park?
He just wouldn't leave me alone. He had a mask on, like his face was covered. He had a hoodie and gloves, and there was a guy that come up to me and he said, "Oh, Islam is the most peaceful religion." And I said, "Look, you can say Islam is the greatest religion. You can say to me Islam is the best religion, but you can never say it's the most peaceful religion." And that kind of set off a real kind of hoo-ha. And the guy was getting, and what was so strange is that the guy that said it was the most peaceful religion was getting so angry, I thought he was going to hit me. And so it's kind of like a really, really stupid thing like that. You know, you're showing the hypocrisy of yourself, that you're saying you're a peaceful religion, but as soon as you criticize them, they go crazy. And so this one other guy just kept on following me, and it just kind of ended in a kind of, not an altercation, but it was more of a kind of like some of the other guys started defending and saying, leave the guy alone. It's on CLE's channel anyway. Video clip of that.
Yeah. Well, make sure that you stay safe out there. You and Steve stick together.
I'll be honest to you. Look, they got my home address. They put it online. They got my family. I don't care anymore. I'm to that point where I'm just like, you know, 40-something years old. I'm like, I can't be bothered. I can't be bothered to shut up, and I can't be bothered to kind of just watch as things are deteriorating, because I've seen it firsthand how gone from quite a moderate secular community to what I call turn into like a 6th century Arab in the UK. That's what they want to live now, as a 6th century Arab in the desert in 21st century Britain, and it's not practical. It's turning half of them into kind of crazed lunatics. And so, you know, I can't sit back anymore. I think people should stop worrying about their own safety and just do what's right.
Yeah, you're at that point. I don't think one can say that for everybody, though. Everybody's got their own concerns. Even for you, you know, I would say to you, you know, perhaps a little bit more concern, or not that you shouldn't go or whatever the case is, definitely not. If you feel like you can and you're emboldened, then for sure. Obviously, you have a family and all the rest of it. So I think there's a balance to be struck, and maybe Sarah will come back and so forth.
I mean,
whenever I'm down, I'll be there.
I think the problem they have with me is that, you know, I don't really have a circle of friends that they can attack. I'm not married. I'm self-employed. I don't really. I'm outside of the Sikh community in the sense that I don't really associate with the Sikh community either, and so there's no way of really kind of targeting me apart from violence.
Fair enough. So well, if you don't have a family to protect, and you're brave enough to do it, then yeah, that's great.
But the thing is, I don't think if you listen to my video on the Thames, which Peter Sweden, I think everything I said I still stand by. I don't think I said anything that was hateful. I just said what my own experiences and what I've seen firsthand. So you know, I can only tell my truth. It doesn't mean it's the truth. It's just my own truth.
Is there anything else you wanted to say? Because obviously, and you've said quite a bit, but you did come on to obviously from what Steve was saying last week. So is there anything else that you wanted to add? We can always point out, and we have done for many shows, all the the tactics and the so forth of the people in Speaker's Corner, but it's more a case of hearing your experience, and obviously Steve has been there and seen some of that as well. So from that point of view, is there anything else that you'd want to share that you haven't done so already?
Yeah, I think one of the things is if anyone ever wants to come to the park, they should come down. But one thing I'd advise people is you can become quite gladiatorial in the park, and I've been kind of guilty of that myself. And there's a few things I've said that are quite harsh, and you've got to remember that everything. And the other thing I would say, if you ever did come down the park, one thing I realised is a lot of people trying to control you and manipulate you subtly. And so I realised that pretty quickly. I'd have Muslims coming up to me, befriending me, and going, "Look, don't say this, don't say that." And I said, "Look, this is the whole point of the park. We can say whatever we want." So they're trying to do like a kind of undercurrent of a blasphemy.
Yeah, hey, I'm your best buddy. I just want to give you some friendly advice and all that sort of stuff. Yeah.
So you had Abdul Hamid say that to me. He said, "Look, bro, I want you to be Muslim. Please don't say this. You know, we will be friends." But then on the other hand, they're calling for hate on Christians and saying this. So there's a kind of a double rule at the park, which I think more people should come down that from Hindus, Sikhs, just to kind of balance out the park, in my opinion.
Yeah, if people are in the UK and they're available, obviously, I'm sure panel members here would love to come down. They're in countries around the world, unfortunately. Otherwise, I think some of them would very much like to come down. So at the moment, because I'm far away from London, we have to leave it to yourself and Steve and a few others to challenge the people there. I think that's all one can do, really. So no, that's helpful. I appreciate you coming on. Thank you for that, Raj. That obviously does actually play into the censorship, because not only is it censorship online on the various YouTube channels with deleting comments or banning people from Facebook groups, there's also the attempted censorship in the park itself, i.e. don't say X, Y, and Z, or if you do, then, you know, the extreme version of censorship, you know, the physical threats. I don't know, Steve, has that ever happened to you? Any sort of threats, or do they see you more as a heckler and so they don't target you in any way?
No, I mean, I've had threats, but I just think all of us must never be intimidated by any of it. You know, they're doing it for one purpose, and that's to silence us. So I will never be silenced by any level of threat. You know, I'm in employment. I've got a family. They're not going to threaten me into silence. It's just not going to happen. And like Raja's saying, you know, they've also used the pally, nicey, or, you know, you're a good guy, Steve. We like you, but, you know, don't say this, don't say that. Sorry, this is Speaker's Corner. This is Britain. This is free speech. Don't even attempt to tell me what I can say and what I cannot say. So, you know, they can be fluffy and nice and friendly and pally. They can be intimidating. It's not going to silence me, and it shouldn't silence anyone.
Yeah, I mean,
go on.
We think like that. There are people at the park that are silenced, even though they don't say it. They won't say certain things for, you know, they won't say openly that they're scared to say it, but they are scared to say it because they know the repercussions are going to be, you know, they're going to be targeted as a hate preacher, that they're going to be called an Islamophobe, or even worse, be threatened. So I think in my personal opinion, I think the park has already got a blasphemy law under it. Once Sarah was kind of ousted to a certain degree. I don't know if he was ousted, but he was threatened, and so I think
I'm not saying they haven't been successful in their intimidatory behaviour, but all I'm saying is they're not going to stop me, and I'm just recommending and encouraging everyone else. Don't let them stop you either.
But the thing is, no.
And I was going to say, what's interesting is during the sort of the run up to Christmas, when Winter Wonderland is on, and you know, I could argue a whole lot against the likes of Winter Wonderland, but one thing it does do is brings a lot of traffic of normal people through Speaker's Corner, and some of them do stop and listen, and actually those people aren't intimidated. And I've seen many times where public on the way to Winter Wonderland stop off, and they certainly give their view and give their response to the hateful preachers that we have from the Muslim faith.
And I'm always saying, you know, let them do the hate, because they are the best anti-dawah medicine that you can get. Anybody that listens to them will go, don't want to touch this. And that's not to say that, like you say, they're unfriendly Muslims, but the ideology behind it, the foundation underneath it. If it was like Jainism, we wouldn't be talking about this. These people are something else. And we're not talking about Jainism, we're talking about Islam. And so they're great adverts. Let the hijab, you know, let Tawhid stand on the fence and sound like a member of ISIS. I see him and Hamid could easily strap on a, you know, gun, and off they go to Syria. They'd fit in like a, they would welcome them with open arms. So they'd be best of buddies in the first day they were there. And so let them keep doing it. We can challenge them when they talk nonsense, but let them keep going.
Well, and, the thing is, one thing they've kind of confused me about is, you know, I've been criticizing Salafi Islam for a long time, and I still believe it's the main problem. But we have people like Shamsi and certain individuals that come to the park that are kind of propagating a version of Salafi Islam, which is, you know, all nicey. And I kind of fought for it for like a few hours until I went home and started reading up on it. And so I think, you know, it's a bit difficult to find out what version of Islam or what is creating the extremism. I personally do think it's the Salafi strain of Islam that is the biggest problem at the park, or in the UK personally.
Yeah, I think so. I think so. I mean, you obviously, have you both had the word hate as well? Because obviously that's normally directed towards the Christian, quote, hate preachers, because obviously this word just gets thrown around.
Yeah, no,
But they-
absolutely, regularly in recent months.
Well, go to Ali Dawa's channel. It says Sikh and Muslim tackling Sikh extremism, and they're talking about me. That I'm the extremist, that I'm a hate preacher, and I'm all this. So, yeah, I've had it loads of times. So I'll just ignore it, to be honest with you.
They just merrily reel that out. That's just their current thing they do regularly.
Yeah, and for those of us who know that that's just a charade, it just makes them sound even more stupid and juvenile than we already do, which is sometimes quite hard, but they sometimes manage to to surpass even our lowest expectations. And so,
which is why I
you
think
notice that only goes one way.
Which is why I think our reaction, quite frankly, should be nothing other than laughter. And taking the piss out of them, taking the mickey out of them, laughing at them, shrieking at them, trolling them, because it deserves no greater intellectual response than that.
I agree with you. Ridicule, rhetoric, of which, Steve, you are one of the top guys there, so keep doing that. It's a bit of a gift that it's not easy for most people to do that. So, when you can do that, talk sense at the same time and just, ridicule the nonsense, that's brilliant.
He was the top guy until Tan turned up. Now Tan's my favourite. Sorry,
well,
Steve.
Tan is more passionate and emotional. I think Steve talks more sense, and he's got a certain way about it. So I'm not sure Tan is always on the money. So I think he misses the point every so often. His passion seems to make up for it in certain people's views. But obviously, Steve's legendary rant against Tawhid is just, that'll never die. Hopefully, if that guy, we actually need to mirror that. I think at some point, because he did come and ask me at one point if it was my channel. So obviously he was looking for whoever the channel owner was,
right? Yeah.
So that he could try and get it down. Because I saw another video just yesterday. I think it was from Nature Corner TV, Speakers Corner TV. What's his name, Johnny? He had a video up there about hate and so forth. And then when I went back to look at it, the video's been taken down. And just said the video is no longer available. So I don't know. I don't get down there enough now to ask him, but I wonder if somebody spoke to him about that. So they'll try all of this.
Can I just ask you a question? Because the video that Muhammad Tawhid done about Christmas, about hating Christmas, does anyone think it's more serious than, because I thought the video was very serious in terms of showing that he was very extreme in his views. But I haven't really heard anyone really kind of like condemn him at Speaker's Corner. When I went there, I was trying to speak to the Muslims about that video. And every time I did, they tried to divert the conversation. And it was actually on camera, but they didn't put it up. I made a few points about, what is Dar al-Kufar? Because if he feels like the UK is Dar al-Kufar, what does that mean? Does anyone know whether that means that that's the land of war?
Yes, Dar means like the dwelling place, and Kufar means infidels. So the dwelling place of infidels.
But does that mean it's the land of war? Does it mean that
it means that
the land of war is Darul Harb.
Yes, Darul Harb or Darul Qital.
But I mean, in classical theology, there's two divisions. There's Darul Islam and there's Darul Harb, and the goal is to convert the whole world into Darul Islam. So,
like technically, it means that like Darul Kufar has certain rules. So, for example, you're not allowed to actually, if you're a Muslim living in Darul Kufar, you actually have to make hijrah unless you have very special reasons to be there, like to make dawah or something like that. But if you can't just live in Darul Kufar without any good reason.
Right, because I've heard different kind of interpretations that Dar al-Kufar could also mean the land of war. I don't know whether that's just.
I think you're talking about Darul Qital, but like Darul Kufar, you're gonna have to make war against them to spread the dawah.
Yeah, so it is kind of hate speech in a way, then, isn't it? If you're saying that openly. Because he also says in the video.
Carry on.
I don't think it's
in the video. If you listen to the end, he says that that the Sharia law is above the police, which means that, you know, he's kind of like advocating any crime, but just anything that the Sharia law permits is legal for him. So, you know, I mean, obviously, you know, Sharia law has a lot of things that are kind of abhorrent in there. So I'm not sure whether he can actually say that. Maybe he can. I don't know whether he
Why don't these radicals just go to Pakistan or Saudi Arabia or something like that? They'll be right at home. They'll be in seemingly in their little minds in paradise. Why don't they just go there? Because the rest of us don't want them here.
That's a very good question, because even according to the Sharia, as I said, if they're living in Darul Kufr, they have to make hijrah to Darul Iman, unless they have some special reason to be in Darul Kufr, like they're a missionary or something like that. And even there, they shouldn't be there forever. They should be there for that particular reason.
Yeah, well, I'm quite happy if all the radicals just go off to, unfortunately, those radical countries. Unfortunately, we can't change them necessarily. We should stop giving them money, but we can't necessarily change Pakistan or Saudi Arabia ourselves, as in you and me here on the panel. But all these radicals like Tawhid and the rest, just go off there and you'll be very happy. You can preach and you'll all be like best buddies, because nobody wants you here. I mean, if you left the park, the moral and intellectual standard would rise immediately. The moment, you know, it's down, it's wallowing. And so that's why I wouldn't, and, you know, and like you said, Raj, it's just avoid these sort of people, because there's no point there. It's like, you know, speaking to children, and that's probably being disrespectful to children.
Yeah, but the problem I have is this: at least with Muhammad Tawhid and Abdul Hamid, they're in your face. You see what you're seeing what you get. But there are people at the park, like I'm going to say Gendawa Digital, who pretends to be all nicey, but if you listen to his videos, he's in complete agreement with Tawhid. There is a video of him sitting in a car with him, and he's in complete agreement with the hatred for the kuffar, Dara kuffar, or this hateful for Christmas. But to your face is very nice. People that I have more problems with, because Muhammad Tawhid, I can see the devil in front of me. But with people like that, they're so sly. They're the ones that are the most trickiest to find out, and the ones to kind of pinpoint. And so I don't really have a problem with Tawhid. Let him just do what he does. He makes himself look like a thug anyway. So
yeah, I agree. Let him do what he does. It's just interacting there. It seems very pointless. You just lose brain cells there. It's not worth the time for that. Anyway, anything else?
If I could add something real quick.
Go for it.
But, yeah, you know, agreeing with Raj on that point. I mean, yeah, they're nice now because, you know, they were like, you know, population is less than 50%. Once they become a majority, you know, that niceness is going to go straight to the window. So when they're in a minority, you know, they don't have the power to do anything. But once they become, you know, a majority, you know, we'll see. And coming to your, like, you know, coming back to your original point, you know, I also grew up in like the, like, you know, Sikh faith and everything. I'm like an agnostic now, but when you were talking about the, you know, Islamic Holocaust of India, like, I did some extensive research on this and came to the same conclusion as you did. And, you know, it took a long time to get there because, you know, I was brought up like, you know, all faiths are good, you know, they all preach the same thing and blah, 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 but that's just not the case. You know, every faith is different and every faith, you know, promulgates, you know, different ideas. So for me, like, you know, I had to go through all that and, you know, it's one of those wake up calls, like, you know, once you go, you know, in and actually, you know, analyze what they say, they all preach different, like, you know, different things. So, you know, on the surface,
I mean,
you know, sorry, go ahead.
Well, one of the, because you used to be Sikh, one of the issues that Sikhs face is obviously, before I say this disclaimer, I'm not an expert on Sikhism, so whatever I say, please don't go crazy, because a lot of people start condemning me or saying something wrong. But for me, you know, Sikhism says that, you know, Islam is another way to God. And so I've tried to kind of rationalize this, and one of the things that I've kind of come to is that Muhammad in his early life, I think he was in Mecca, was preaching really kind of lovey-dovey kind of Christian kind of ideals. And I believe that over time, his ego and his anger and his lust kind of got the better of him. And then he become kind of like a maniacal warlord in his 40s or 50s. And so I'm kind of in that kind of weird kind of place, because as you know, Sikhs, we do believe that you know, there are different paths to God. So I can't outright say Islam is completely wrong, but I can say they've got a lot of bad ideas in there that I think maybe crept in later through the hadiths and men.
I don't know. For me, I don't view it as religion at all. To me, Islam is a polity, meaning that it is a conception of the state. Meaning that it is a political doctrine to me. So I know what you're talking about, because I've read the Guru Granth Sahib before, and I've seen its attitudes towards Islam and stuff like that, and telling them have you. But I think the Gurus got it wrong in that sense, where they saw it just as another faith. I just don't believe that. I think that, ultimately it is a polity and it is an imperialist ideology. So to me, I view it with a completely different, different lens. Although I may not be a Sikh anymore, I still respect, some of the Gurus as freedom fighters. So for me, it's and it's also studying Islam and what it did to India has led me to a greater appreciation of my heritage as well, because we identify within the broader Indian context of Indians civilization going back thousands of years, and reading about the golden age of India and all that stuff, all the discoveries, the decimal system, chess, the discovery of gravity, and all this stuff. And I had no idea about it, because I grew up in I want to say that the whole community, but the context in which I grew up in was there's a lot of Hindu bashing. Yeah. And to me, that's really misplaced, because India is secular, India is democratic, India is a republic because of the fact that it is majority Hindu. And so this whole thing about caste and all this other stuff, it was just completely I had to rethink everything.
Yeah, I mean, I understand what you're saying. This is going a bit off topic, but so I'll bring it back. But I have a big problem with Sikh community as well, especially with the caste system, which is why I disassociate myself with a lot of these temples, because they've got caste. But in terms of Islam, there is a problem in the sense that it kind of says, the Gurus have said that be a good Muslim and be a good Hindu. So there must be something within the faith that the Gurus saw that was salvageable. So if you look at the 5 pillars of Islam, that's not really that bad. It's everything else on top, when you see the hadiths and everything, that really takes it to a kind of a different kind of religion. But the basics aren't that bad. That's just from me.
I mean, I just view, because for me at least, I can, from what I've read and what I've studied, I mean, Islam is everything. So it's an all-encompassing ideology. So you just there's religious aspects, there's political aspects, there's economic aspects, psychological aspects. It's everything. So once you take a certain section of it away, so if I take away politics from it, it's no longer Islam. So for me, it's it's either all, pretty much all all or nothing. Because if you take out any one aspect, it's no longer Islam. It's a degraded version of it, or a watered down version of it. And I remember, and as you were saying, I remember one of the lines from the Holy Book of Sikhism, and it was talking about, I'm just going to paraphrase because I don't remember the exact. When a Muslim becomes merciful to all beings, then he can call himself a Muslim. But when I read the Quran, and the Quran says that Muslims are merciful to one another and ruthless against the unbelievers, I'm like, that's a conflict right there. It's a conflict.
Yeah. I've had this conversation with another Sikh guy that I've just been recently having, and it is a bit of I'm trying to get my head around it myself, because I want to believe in the Gurus and say that they saw something good, but when I see so much bad in Islamic doctrine, I need to kind of ignore those bits, because if 70% is good but 30% is bad, 30% is still quite a lot. So you can't just ignore it, because they're kind of interlocked with each other as well.
Especially when I ask Muslims about those invaders that came into India, Babur and Tamerlane and Aurangzeb and all those monsters, and they praise them to the skies. They praise them to the skies.
This is why I had a problem with Adnan Rashid, because I want to say to people that when someone says that there was no Indian Holocaust, to me, it's like someone saying to a black person, there's no slavery. I get offended. So I had a big kind of discussion with him. And one of the claims he made was that not even 100,000 people were massacred over 800 years. And so I managed to prove from one of the Muslim sources, Moore's reign, that they massacred 100,000 POWs, Hindus, in just 2 days. And so that kind of shut him up. So it just shows that the dishonesty from a lot of the Muslims, and especially in the Indian subcontinent, they can't admit that the faith was spread by the sword. The one thing about the West, a lot of people say to me, "Oh, you love the UK and you love the West." This has done a lot of terrible things, but at least they admit they've done wrong. Yeah, you can't move on until you admit it. With their Muslim atrocities, they say nothing's happened. You know, it's all in your head. Nothing's going on. You know, they didn't conquer India. I mean, estimate 80 million to 150 million people were massacred over 800 years. But when you speak to a Muslim, they say it's like one of the most peaceful conquests that ever occurred. Flowers and stuff. So yeah, it's very difficult to have a conversation with someone who's Pakistani or from that area about this.
Well, if they deny their ancestry, you know, like you said about the DNA, people like, you know, people in Pakistan, like, you know, share the same DNA as we do, but they deny their, you know, Hindu ancestry. So at the end of the day, you know, how can you reason with such people?
Well, this is the problem I have with a lot of Muslims. I mean, Indian history, especially North India, the Indus Valley civilization, you have, you know, the Vedas were, the Vedas were written down there as well. But they will not even talk about this stuff because it goes against Islam and it's paganism. So, you know, I've tried talking to Pakistani Muslims about Indian history, and they just said, no, it's rubbish, it's Hinduism, it's this. But you should, like you said, you're not Sikh anymore, but you can still be proud of what your ancestors accomplished.
But there are some guys that are like using verses from the Vedas that are trying to prove that it foretells the coming of Muhammad and so on.
Of course.
Are they? I've not heard that.
Yeah, of course.
It's a bit like the Bible, isn't it? What they try to do with the Bible.
Yeah, that's what's his face, like, you know, Zakir Naik, like, you know, he does that. And you know, even I have a problem with the term Hinduism, because the term, you know, I keep saying this, you know, the term Hindu does not refer to a, like, you know, religious group. It refers to indigenous people. So anybody who's indigenous to, like, you know, South Asia is considered a Hindu. And even within Hinduism, there's, like, you know, schools of atheism, there's schools of, like, you know, monotheism, polytheism, you know, so, you know, you can be a Hindu and be anything, you know. And
well, the Hindu term is from the Islamic conquest.
I think it's from the British. But it's a weird word. It's like a collection word for ideologies that it's like you would say Europeanism. And in Europeanism, you have like European Christianity, you have Marxism, you have Scandinavian paganism and Greek paganism and all kinds of ideologies.
Exactly. And that's what, like, you know, people miss the ball on that, because, like, you know, culturally, I do consider myself a Hindu. You know, even though, you know, I am an agnostic. So, you know, for me, it's just one of those things. People just even like, you know, the, like, you know, terminology that they use is wrong. So for me, it's just like, you know, pick up a book and read, for fuck's sake.
What do you think of Sufi Islam? Because I believe that's the one form of Islam that kind of is kind of out of the fold of Islam in a lot of ways, because it kind of seems like a completely different faith. I mean, what do you think of that? Because you know from the Sikh scriptures that there's a lot of Sufis.
Yeah, I mean, within the I can only speak to the Indian context of Sufism. By and large, you know, they were just missionaries. They just wanted to, like, you know, attract people. So, and you'll see that, like, you know, a lot of, you know, anti-Hindu polemics were, you know, like, you know, were from Sufis, and they're praised as guys as these sort of saints of tolerance. Indeed, individual Sufis may have been tolerant. I mean, for the most part, those Sufis who retreated from the world, who went into the woods to have their experiences and were not involved in politics, okay, but by and large, they actually accompanied these invaders and came in and, you know, set up shop. So for me, they're just an extension of that greater, like, you know, Dawa movement. So indeed, there may have been individual Sufis who were cool, but, you know, by and large, they were not. You know.
Yeah, but if you look at they're more spiritual, like the Dharmic religions rather than the Abrahamic, and they've got one of the things I've always said is one problem with Islam is that it doesn't have any kind of real spirituality, and because there's restriction on hymns and singing, Sufi Islam has that. It kind of makes a more rounded person. I don't know if that's just my opinion from meeting Sufis and reading about Sufis in in Sikh history, because there's places in Punjab called like Farid God, and that's after the Sufi saint Baba Farid, and we have a lot of their scriptures in our Guru Granth Sahib. So they must have done some good, or they must have done something good about.
Possibly, for me at least, like I would direct you to read because there's like a few authors that I would direct you to. One is Sitaram Goel, Ram Swarup, and Conrad Elst. Those three specifically, and they kind of debunk this whole thing. And like even the first guy I mentioned, Ram Goel, he wrote an article, or sorry, it was a part of a book, and one of the sections of the book was the violent truth behind the Sufi mask, and he debunks all of that. Like he has quotes from Sufis who are talking about how not to celebrate Diwali because that's a sign of kufr. And there was one Sufi in particular who actually rejoiced at the execution of one Sikh, Guru Arjan Dev. So I would direct you to those three authors because Sufis, participate in jihad campaigns. They didn't denounce the slaughter, and as I said, by and large, yes, I would stick with my opinion. There are individual exceptions which I can name, but by and large, I just see them as missionaries. So.
Yeah, I think they're trying to bridge the gap between Hinduism and Islam. It was kind of like easier for a Hindu to convert.
It's impossible. It's impossible.
But it would have been easier for a Hindu to convert to Sufi Islam because it's still
sure, easily. But the Sufi experience, once again, it's illusory. So when they had those experiences with God, it's not considered as a direct union with God. It's not considered as a direct contact with. It's just considered. So that's the difference. The mystics in India believe that you could approach God directly through experience and raise your level of consciousness to a higher level of consciousness. So there's it's irreconcilable ultimately.
I think one of the things is that I don't see a lot of kind of Christians or people that debate Muslims kind of bring up the Indian Holocaust enough because it's one of the most barbaric. It's one of the most barbaric conquests in human history, and most people don't know that, and it's kind of frustrating because you hear a lot of Muslim apologists going, "Well, the West has done this, the West has done that." But when you look at India and the way they kind of raped and pillaged it, it takes things to another level, in my opinion.
Yeah, there's one story in particular that always. First invasion came in, went through what's his name, Muhammad bin Qasim, when he came in present-day Karachi, when he invaded and everything like that. I remember the wife of the Hindu king and a bunch of other noble women. They set themselves on fire to avoid being taken as slaves, and he was still able to take back 30,000 Hindu slaves, including the king's daughters, and brought them back to Iraq on the slave market. I think it was some 30,000 men, women, and children brought back as slaves. So
yeah, I mean, the thing is,
no, another thing you have to consider is that there were fewer people lived back then, so it's the percentage of people that they killed is much greater than you might think. 1 million killed back then is a larger percentage of the Earth population than 1 million killed during the First World War.
Yeah. Look at you look at other places came to. Look at North Africa. I was a Christian at one point. Persia was mostly Zoroastrian, and India and I think Spain were the only ones to retain the majorities after the Islamic onslaught. So that just speaks to India's bravery and their ability to fight.
But do you know one of the things I think the reason why India suffered so much was because of the caste system. I don't know if you agree with this. Because when people are born into certain caste, you could have the greatest warrior, who might have been like a Dalit, but he could never move upwards. You understand? So people were really rigidly stuck to their caste, from what I understand. I may be wrong. And so even if someone was born in the warrior caste, they could be completely rubbish or terrible as a warrior, but stuck within that class. Whereas with the Sikhs, it was everybody was allowed to fight, regardless, which is kind of, I think, one of the reasons why India has been conquered so easily for so long. Even with the British, they used the caste to kind of divide and rule as well.
I just posted an article about that whole casting. If you look in the chat box, that whole thing has been debunked, and I got like an article for you to read. That's something to look at.
So you don't agree with that, then?
No, I think the caste system originally, before any sort of invasion, to me it was about divisions of labor, essentially divisions of labor, and this whole hereditary thing, this whole different races, all been debunked.
All right,
testing and all that.
You send me a link. I'll read that.
Yeah, it's in the group chat box. If you look down to the very bottom of it. It's supposed to link to it. But yeah, that whole casteism, as I call it, casteism, I'm not against divisions of labor, because everybody can't be equal, because then society fails. So to me, that whole caste thing, it's a myth in terms of its origins. In terms of what it became, yes, I agree with you.
So I've stepped away for a few minutes, lads. Are we on a different topic here about, what is it, the Indian
It's
caste
basically
system?
about the Indian, it's about the Indian Holocaust, the conquest of India. What people talk about. I had that conversation with Adnan Rashid, and a lot of Pakistani Muslims deny that anything even happened. I think it might be out of embarrassment, because their ancestors...
It seems the same with the Turkish Muslims want to...
with the Armenian genocide.
Correct.
Yeah.
Or the African slave trade. I mean, every Western person will acknowledge that the colonial powers took slaves at a certain point, but they pale in comparison to the Arab/Muslim slave traders over however many hundreds of years taking slaves.
They castrated most of the black slaves as well, so this is why there's no descendants in the Arab world. One of the things I was going to say is that I've said it before. One of the problems I have is that with the West has done a lot of bad things, but at least they've owned up to what they've done, and they openly admit what they've done, and they've tried to rectify what they've done to a certain degree. But with the Muslim world, they will not admit anything. You can show them any kind of quotes from Muslim chroniclers and stuff like that. They will not accept that India was conquered by the sword, and it was like one of the bloodiest massacres in human history.
Yep.
Yeah, it's true. And they can try to sugarcoat it all they want, but the facts speak for themselves. And there's, if that mentality, if it persists, they're just repeat the same stuff, over and over again.
But this is the thing: you can't learn from your mistakes until you admit you made a mistake.
Yeah.
And at least the West has admitted it, and they've tried to move on, and they've tried to rectify and not make the same mistakes again. But the Muslim world will just keep on making the same mistakes, which is why I find it very difficult to have conversations with Muslims when it comes to talking about the Indian Holocaust, because when they talk about it, they just dismiss any of my kind of concerns, any references I give, or.
Well, they have to, Raj. If their claim is that Islam, and by extension Muhammad, is the perfect example to follow for all people for all time, then by definition it becomes a position that they have to deny it at all costs, no matter what. And so you have elaborate apologetics being dreamt up, worked out to try and counter these things. And only credulous, gullible people will believe it. The rest of us will go, hang on a moment, this is nonsense, or that's not right, or whatever the case is. But that's all it is to try and keep people in the fold, because we do hear from many ex-Muslims and many other people saying that a lot of people are deconverting, that are having serious doubts at the very least. And so it seems like a desperate effort to try and keep these people in the fold. But once the critical thinking kicks in to look at your own worldview, then it's a different story, and it becomes like that thing of there's always that little thought. And we heard it from Hassan earlier this evening when he was on, and we've heard it from other ex-Muslims. Once they start to question, then it becomes that sort of effect that doesn't stop, and the answers they give you suddenly see through a different light than you do before. You went, oh, okay, that sounds right. Now you go, hang on a moment, let me go and examine that. Let me go look it up. And then it starts to crumble. And that's what they are, in my opinion, battling against, and not very successfully for anybody that does have the critical thinking running.
And another thing I'd like to point out at this stage is because if we go and debunk something, we refute something, we show all the facts, we give them everything. A couple of weeks, months, years later, they start exactly where they were. We've just seen this with embryology. I mean, I thought this was really dead for good. And now hijab comes up and makes the same old claims again, which have been debunked so many times. So the same with the mountains. We've shown that this is not true. We've shown that the Quran is wrong on this. And yet now, a couple of years later, after all the videos have sort of quietened down a bit, now they're coming and making the same claims over and over again. I don't know how.
But you don't understand. If you wait a little bit, then it becomes true after a while.
It must be. But really, it's beyond me, because I'm looking at this. This is the height of dishonesty. How can you go and do this and repeat this, and everything has already been said, and this is done, this is finished? I don't get it, really.
Wasn't it Hitler that said
No, it was Goebbels.
It was Himmler.
The bigger the lie, the more the people.
Goebbels or Himmler?
Goebbels.
It was Himmler. Oh, Goebbels, yeah, Goebbels.
Okay, there you go.
If you keep on repeating a lie enough, they'll become truth.
Correct. That's what some people go, oh, well, I've heard that
now.
before. 15 different people have said the same thing. It must be true. I'll never go and look for it myself. As long as some people say it and I heard it from multiple people. We all do that, don't we, to some degree? But on important, life-changing things, you really want to be more certain than, hey, I heard it from 10 different people and it all sounds the same. I mean,
you also added that, I don't remember the exact word, but like the more outrageous the claim, or the more like the bigger the lie, the more it must be, the more it is believed. So if you make a kind of a plausible lie, that's not good enough. They have to be really crazy.
TDS Davis saying in the comments there, Goebbels' quote is BS. So TDS, maybe you can let us know who said it, or was that quote from somebody else, or in what way? TDS Davis, pretty smart. So if he says something, I tend to listen, and happy for him to
make up your mind. Is he pretty or smart?
Didn't I say pretty smart? Nice one. Stops that late in the night over there, especially where you guys are. Good, guys. I think that's been very interesting. Thank you to our guests, Raj and TJ. Obviously, you guys are welcome to come on. I often ask for Muslims, so if you know any Muslims that want to come on and defend something in particular, then that's what we're here for. I'm going to hand over now to Abu.
Hang on. Can I have one anecdote?
Yeah, please.
With the hate thing. Because actually, Rob, you suggested that I should talk about this. Because what happened to me today on the way home is that I stopped off to get some salad, and on the parking space, on the parking area, you have 3 parking spaces which are designated for handicaps. So they have this international symbol for handicap parking, and it's very clearly signposted and everything. And I see a car pull up as I get out. It goes and it drives past me, goes to the handicap parking and stops there. So I look at these guys, they don't have a handicap sticker, they don't have anything, and they look really like Muslims to me. So I go up to them, knock on the window and say, excuse me, do you require handicap parking? And they look at me and they just tell me, fuck off. And I said, okay, so they don't. So I said, well, are you aware this is handicap parking and you know that you shouldn't? And doesn't your morality somehow teach you this? And they were talking inside the car now, and I heard mashallah, and I heard, that they are really Muslims. So I said to him, look, I think you guys are Muslims, and don't you think that Muhammad taught you a thing or two about respect, number 1, towards elders, and number 2, towards others who are needy and less fortunate than you are? Is this your morality here, that you are now resigning yourself to your own desires, that you need to walk like 5 meters less and you don't care about the needy and those? Is that where your morality comes from? And the guy got out and says, I am now going to go get my knife and then we're going to sort this out one way or the other. And I said, okay, so all you have is violence. Now, what was interesting, this was getting quite loud, this exchange, because I'm shortening it. This was like 5 minutes. And all of a sudden, more people came in. And then there were some people who said, listen, you now get into this car and fuck off, and you are not entitled to park here. Learn that this is the way that it is in Germany, and now move. And they did. But they were so full of hate. They were so full of animosity towards someone who can dare challenge them when this is their turf. And quite obviously then others came in and the whole thing was resolved. So
and don't you notice as well, Stops, that a number of them are very brave when they have cohorts around. When they're either outnumbered or one-on-one, they're far less brave.
Far less brave. They ran away with the tails tucked firmly between their legs. Now, for me, it was just the hate. It was just the hatred that they have for anything, because there's this is not our law. This is not our law that you are claiming here. I said, well, here in Germany, it is fuck off.
Yeah, unfortunately, you are not backed up by the chancellor there, are you? She's
this is a stupid idiot. But what
Germany
I like
become
is
the next Syria.
When you talk to people, then they will back you up. They will not confront others, and well, you know me that I'm not shy, so I will confront them, and sometimes even I'm a bit stupid, because it could very well be that the guy gets out with a knife and then just sticks it between my ribs. Yes, I'm taking that chance, but then when there are other people and you are loud enough, then they do step in, and this is the good thing.
Yes, yeah. So, and I think it's the same in other countries, in the US, and it's the quiet majority. The people that wouldn't normally get into a fuss or whatever, that do things at home and don't go shout and protest and all that. And I think that's often underestimated, and has been in this country and the US, and maybe even to some degree in Germany, because people are, it's hard not to see this unless you're completely blind, or your narrative is, I don't care what the facts are, I'll just keep believing whatever I believe. But the rest of the people that are somewhat reasonable.
But this arrogance and this hatred to everything is so mind-boggling. It's funny that these people really have no respect for anyone other than their own akis, their own brothers and things.
Where did they learn that from, do you suppose?
I don't know. Maybe it's from the Mazda instruction manual.
On that hilarious note, let me hand over to Abbo to close us out.
The answer is Budapest.
Okay, so first, just a little bit.
Leave. Can I just ask? Do you want? I'm going to be going to Speaker's Corner on Sunday. Would you want me to try and get Tan on?
Yeah. If he wants to come on here,
I'll try.
He's no Muslim, so ask him.
Yeah.
Ask him if he wants to come on to the show. And I used to come down, as you know. I don't think we've ever met in person, Raj, that I can remember. But and obviously Tan came. I did meet Tan because he was there that day, and I recorded some footage of that particular day. So ask him if he wants to come on, and anybody who's interested, whether they're Muslim or a critique of Islam, we'd like to have them on. So go ahead.
Ask Abu Talha on. Abu Talha.
No, we've had him in private hangouts. It's a waste of time. That's also a lowering of the brain cells. Try and get somebody else on that can actually defend the position. Hijab, we'd have Hijab on. I'm sure Stops would enjoy a one-on-one with Hijab. So if you get Hijab on you, because at one point he said he might come on, and of course that was like
they won't come onto a show that's so highbrow. He'll probably kind of not be too intimidated.
I'll do a tango with him.
They're not going to come on here because they know they're going to be kind of demolished. They haven't got their crowd around them, or their kind of his size or his stature.
Yeah, it's much harder here to use tactics. You can be called out, and we can look things up on the internet very quickly. So,
and the thing is also with the Muhammad Hijab, when you really see he uses his stature, his kind of charisma to kind of win people around. And on the net, you can't do that if you only get your voice.
He's got nobody to touch. There's nobody to start touching up here. So,
Anyway, I appreciate you letting me on. If you want me back on in the future, call me.
Yeah, if you're around and you've got time, every Friday 8 p.m. at the moment. Feel feel free to pop on.
Thanks
again.
a lot. Anyway,
So,
I'm going to shoot. Hopefully, I'm still
Alrighty.
safe at Speaker's Corner on Sunday, but I should be all right.
yeah, maybe
Anyway,
get
take
some
care.
videos, and if if need be, you can send them over to me, and I'll upload
Oh,
them for you. If you
will
need to.
you do that then? Because I can record
Yeah.
stuff, but I've not got no one to put them up.
Okay,
for.
we're friends on Facebook. Drop me a message, and we can make a plan. Either you upload the footage, or you send me the footage, or I'll send you back the little SD card or whatever. Yeah, it's not a problem.
Yeah,
If you haven't got a
because
channel, I'm happy to put it on mine, and I'll
What-
credit you or whatever. No problem. But get some footage. It's always useful to get footage from non-Muslims, because obviously the overwhelming footage is all recorded.
Because
by
it's,
Muslims.
because what I know I keep on going on about Tam, but I am kind of Mike is kind of he's like one of my favourites at the partner. People that are not recording him anymore because they're saying that we're giving him airtime. So I might just record some of these conversations, and if you want to put them up, I'll send them over to you. Then.
Yeah, we can make a plan, and you can do that. Yeah, and I'll just put credits for you. If you've got a channel, if not, I'll just put your name and
I haven't.
whatever else you
Just,
want on there.
you just use it as you need to use it. Anyway, thanks again, and hopefully I'll chat again next week or the week after.
No problem.
Bye.
Alrighty, cheers then.
Cheers.
All right, Abu, over to
Yeah,
you.
so-
Finish us off.
We were talking about what the Prophet Muhammad said on his deathbed, and whether or not he said anything against jihad or something. Or
Is that the last sermon?
yeah. So I found something that points
Found
in
one
another
version
direction.
there that
So,
says there are many of. Yeah.
So I'm just going to read a little bit of background. So, in the last days of the month of Safar, in the 11th year of the Hijrah, May 632, the same year the Prophet Muhammad died, the Prophet Muhammad decided to send an army led by Hussam ibn Zayd to the land of the Byzantines to fight the Battle of Mu'tah. The army established its headquarters in the Juruf region, not sure where that is, outside Medina. Meanwhile, Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, his condition deteriorated, and Osama decided not to march, but to wait. So this is just before his death. Okay, so here is the hadith. It's not so much more information, really. But just to show the hadith in Sahih Bukhari, the Prophet appointed Osama as the commander of the troops to be sent to Syria. The Muslims spoke about Osama unfavorably. The Prophet said, I have been informed that you spoke about Osama. Let it be known he is the most beloved of all people. Anyway, the point of this hadith is that just before the Prophet's death, he ordered Osama ibn Zayd to go and fight the Romans. So he didn't, what do you call it? What's the word I'm looking for? Didn't denounce jihad. Quite the opposite. Hello.
Sorry, what did you need? You got it right.
Yeah. What happened to Rob? No, he did not denounce jihad because quite the opposite. He ordered Osama ibn Zayd to go and fight the Romans.
Cool. Thanks, Abu. Sorry, I my whole thing froze up there, so I had to just restart it there.
Everybody buy a Mac.
Yeah, well, that was the browser. That wasn't the Mac. That was the browser. Brilliant. Thank you so much, guys. We'll probably do circumcision next week. That was something that Stops suggested. So let's we'll have a look over the period. So again, if you get any crazy comments or any news articles, otherwise we will talk about circumcision next week. Thank you to Abu, Stops as always, TJ, and to Raj and Steve, and to all the viewers. And we will see you again next Friday, 8 p.m. UK time.
Shalom.
Thanks, guys.
Zionist shalom.
Cheers.